Right on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
The World Cup kicks off in Qatar today.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Sunday, the 20th of November, and this is Breakfast on GB News with me, Angela Rippon, and my colleague, Martin Dorkney.
We are live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. Here's what's making the news this morning.
There's just hours to go until the much-anticipated Football World Cup kicks off. The first to take place in winter and the first to be hosted by a Muslim country. We're going to be bringing you everything you need to know.
And Rishi Sunak has met with Ukraine's President Zelensky in Kyiv, promising them £50 million in defence aid. This is his first visit to the country since becoming Prime Minister.
Meanwhile, the government are planning Swiss-style relationships with the European Union in an attempt to boost trade relations. All morning, we're going to be asking you if you would vote differently for Brexit now if you were given the chance again. You can have your say on our Twitter poll. We're at GB News.
And it's been 30 years since the Windsor Castle fire, which destroyed 115 rooms, including 9 state rooms, back in 1992. Our reporter will be live from Windsor.
Well, as ever, of course, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing us at gbviews@gbnews.co.uk. So to our top story. After over a decade of controversy, the 2022 FIFA World Cup starts today in Qatar as the hosts face Ecuador in Doha.
Human rights groups have criticised its treatment of foreign workers as well as its stance on same-sex relationships.
Well, England kick off their World Cup tomorrow against Iran, which is said to be tainted by their ongoing unrest at home.
We're joined now by Nina David, a crisis and tactical Iran campaigner from Amnesty International UK. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And as well... OK, so let's go.
Well, as well as our sports broadcaster, Aidan McGee, who's also with us in the studio.
Morning, how are
Morning,
you?
Aidan. Sorry,
Good morning.
How you doing, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yourself?
Very well.
Good.
So we go to our guest, first of all.
So we're going to our guest, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know the guys here are going to want to talk about the implications of football on Iran. But can I just ask you, first of all, because I am fascinated by what is happening in Iran at the moment where women are concerned. And I have to say, I have such respect for the very, very brave women and young girls who are removing their headscarves, who are cutting their hair. What I have found extraordinary is that in all of the street demonstrations, it is not just the women who are demonstrating, but alongside them are men, the fathers, the brothers, the husbands, the very people who have always insisted that their women cover. What is going on in Iran? What is happening here?
Brilliant question. So what we've seen now is for over 2 months, unprecedented, sustained and nationwide protests, which have support across society in Iran and which are now currently posing a real crisis of legitimacy for the Iranian government. You may know that this recent wave of protests was triggered by the killing of a young Kurdish woman. So 22-year-old Zina Massa Amini was detained and beaten by the so-called morality police under the country's discriminatory mandatory hijab laws, and she died in custody 3 days later. So what we saw, what started out as a protest, as you said, against the compulsory hijab, in favor of women's body autonomy and against the morality police, has actually evolved into something much, much broader. It's an anti-government movement, which we're seeing embodied in the slogan of woman, life, freedom. So people are now protesting against corruption, against the lack of press freedoms in Iran, against the lack of social freedoms, and against decades of state repression and state impunity. And like you said, it's also a very beautiful protest. You know, these powerful images of young women and girls in the streets taking off their hijabs, supported by men and boys as well. But what's really, really important to point out 2 months into these protests is the real lethal force which the state has responded with. So just this week, a number of more killings. According to Amnesty numbers, we've had 200 deaths, so 200 killings of protesters and bystanders, including at least 30 children. And in reality, the numbers are much higher than that. So even though these protests are continuing with intensity, what we're seeing is the Iranian government and the security forces continuing to clamp down, and particularly in ethnic provinces such as Balochistan and Kurdistan, which are really experiencing the brunt of these crackdowns.
Are we really seeing the beginning of what might be described as a sort of a gentle revolution going on here, where the men are supporting the women, which in itself is historic in its way, but they're using it as a platform to actually demonstrate to the government that they do not want that regime anymore?
I think that's a very fair comment. We at Amnesty are describing this as an uprising, and it is unprecedented by virtue of the fact that it's been so sustained. We've seen protests in Iran on countless occasions in 2017, in 2019, in 2020, but this is unique. The tone is different, and it is anti-government. It's anti-regime. It's the clerical government. And what's different this time around, and as an Iranian, I've noticed this myself, is that there's a lack of fear. Women and girls are no longer scared. We're not scared.
Can I ask you how this has left the popularity of the team with the public in Iran? Because I'm hearing there's a very small amount of people that are actually behind the team because of their position. And also I've heard reports that the Qatari officials have issued 10,000 tickets to pro-Iranian officials, government officials, to make sure that everybody out there is backing the hardline stance. Is that true?
It's a really interesting what we're seeing in terms of the World Cup, because traditionally the World Cup in Iran is a source of much joy in Iran, which is often the case for huge sporting occasions. It's been a source of happiness for a beleaguered population, widely watched. It's usually a symbol of national unity, national identity and pride. However, that is certainly not the case this time around. We've seen a unique shift in sentiment, and the national team, Team Melli, has actually come under widespread criticism and opposition. And what you're seeing now is I suppose we can call it a boycott in a sense, in terms of attending and watching the World Cup. Very unique. And this is also reflected in the actions of Ali Daei, Ali Karimi, those football legends, former managers of the Iran team, who have rejected invitations to go to Qatar to watch the matches. So I think we will likely see a decreased attendance of Iranians at the games.
That's interesting.
Yeah, OK, so let's pull this back to Aidan in the studio here. Mate, this game is pure politics now, isn't it? England versus Iran. We've had James Cleverly coating off the Iranians, saying they're spreading bloodshed. Can we actually talk about the game, or is this all about politics?
Well, I don't think enough has been made in the build-up to this match about the politics. I mean, look at the group that they're in for a start. I mean, they're in a group with England, USA and Wales, three of their sworn enemies, obviously Wales being part of the UK. In terms of the actual team, well, they're going really well. They qualified out of their section really well. They've lost 3 of the last 29 matches. They've got players playing in Europe. Alireza Jahanbakhsh, who was the player in the press conference a couple of days ago, criticised the English media, who then had an off-the-record briefing afterwards, said, look, to be honest with you, if you'd asked me the questions in a different place, in a different setting, I probably would have asked them differently. This is their 3rd World Cup they've qualified for in a row. It's a source of national pride, as your guest said just then, because back in 1998, I mean, they had a big gap where they weren't habitual qualifiers. They beat USA quite famously in 1998, and that was a great source of national pride, that one. So in terms of the actual game, they're in the top 20 in the world, along with all the other teams in that group. So yes, you had that horrible phrase, the group of death, which usually means in common parlance that all the teams have a good chance of making it through to the next round. Iran will fancy their chances because England, don't forget, are under a huge pressure. They've not won in 6 matches. They've not won a game since March. There's lots of speculation about Gareth Southgate's future as well. But, yeah, I mean, they've got a very experienced coach as well. Carlos Queiroz, former assistant manager to Alex Ferguson, twice at Manchester United. He was the guy credited by Sir Alex Ferguson with improving their transfer policy, persuading them they couldn't keep signing players from Aston Villa. They had to go and sign players from around the world. So they're in decent shape. There's
been lots of talk about will there be a protest by the Iranian players. This is the moment to do it. Are they likely to do it, or are they going to take the side of the regime?
Well, all the evidence so far is that it's very much taking the side of the regime. They've sworn allegiance in effect. As I say, we saw a very cagey press conference the other day involving the players and the man and the coach. We see the pictures there of recent protests, actually. But having said that, I don't think there's that much support in the actual country itself for Iran. You have to say that. I mean, and this is with the team in reasonably good shape.
So it'd be interesting. Nina is still with us. Nina, will you actually be watching the games? And do you know whether or not any of your friends will be watching, whether they're big football fans or not?
I'll be watching the game. I love football. I'm not sure. I think it's fair to say I'll be supporting England this time round. But like I said, I think in Iran, what we're seeing is likely a boycott of the games for the first time, because many in Iran feel this team is not representative of the people, and potentially serves as a vehicle for representing the government. But I'd like to just say it still remains within the gift of the players and the team to make a move to express solidarity with the protests and with women and girls in Iran, and I very much hope they do so in line with a number of other international Iranian athletes that have competed abroad in the last few weeks.
Nina, thank you very much indeed. I know you're going to stay with us, and I hope we're going to be able to talk to you again a bit later this morning. But I do wonder, guys, whether or not the Iranian team would dare to do anything so publicly on the World Cup stage, knowing that when they go home, it's going to be...
The London-based stand-up comic Omid Jalili has challenged the players, the opponents of Iran in the first group, to do a scrunch and snip when they score a goal. They seem to make gestures about everything else in politics these days. Why not that one? But I don't think we'll be seeing it.
I think it'd be very, very brave of them to do it if they do. It's 11 minutes past 6. You are watching GB News. Let us bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
And after negotiations throughout the night, a deal has finally been agreed at COP27 to help poor countries deal with the impact of climate change. The so-called Loss and Damage Fund will help developing nations bear the cost of disasters such as drought and flooding. However, a decision on exactly which countries should pay has been left until COP28 next year.
Elon Musk has reinstated Donald Trump's Twitter account. The decision comes after 51.8% of Twitter users voted yes in an online poll, which received more than 15 million votes. The former president was suspended from the social media platform in January 2021 after a pro-Trump group attacked the US Capitol.
And the Housing Secretary has written to every English council leader and social housing provider, warning that deaths like that of Awar Bishak must never happen again. The 2-year-old died as a result of prolonged exposure to mould. The chief executive of Rochdale Borough-wide Housing, Gareth Swarbrick, was sacked yesterday. Michael Gove said the country must raise the bar dramatically on the quality of housing and ensure tenants' voices are heard.
England captain Harry Kane is expected to wear his One Love rainbow armband during the World Cup in Qatar. New armbands have been created for the tournament, but 9 European nations, including Wales, are set to keep the band that shows support for LGBT people. Now, during his first visit to Ukraine since becoming Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak yesterday promised President Volodymyr Zelensky a £50 million air defence aid package.
The pledge comes as senior government officials claim massive support for European security from the UK will help to a frictionless Swiss-style trade deal.
Joseph Robertson, Director of Orthodox Conservatives, is here with us this morning. Good morning, Joseph. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. What do you think Rishi Sunak was hoping to get out of this? I mean, is he just wanting to improve his image on the world stage as a world leader, do you think?
I think there's a bit of dive and run from what's going on at home, really. He's just had the catastrophe of the budget. He's just announced...
He's running away, then?
Yeah, he's marching away from austerity as we march into austerity. That's the way I like to look at it. And, you know, apparently has 50 million free while we're struggling looking around for 50 billion at home.
But do we know if that's going to be 50 million in cash or is it actually in goods and services and support? It may not be in actual money. Do we know that?
Well, with a lot of what we've spent so far in Ukraine, which is over 2 billion, I think it's close to 2.5 now, we don't really know where a lot of it goes. And this has been one of the constant outcries from the public. We don't know if it's all cash or it's all weapons or it all gets used. We don't know if it goes to certain offshore accounts or whether it goes straight to the government and is used directly for the people. So a lot of it is very up in the air.
That's an interesting kite to fly, that you think it might be going to officials rather than actually be going to the people and to help the Ukrainian situation at the moment. Do you have any proof to back that?
Well, one thing that I was looking at is charity funding that goes out to the Ukraine, and of course the Red Cross have been doing a great amount of humanitarian work. They've had to pause their funding because they're not sure where some of it's going. Yeah. So I think that's a good sort of ideal ballpark to be looking at. If the world's most preeminent humanitarian relief charity can't trust where its funds are going, you probably have to wonder where the rest of the money is going as well.
And Joseph, what's your take on the British public's appetite for giving more money to Ukraine? Because we saw an extraordinary incident earlier this week where missiles went into Poland and Zelensky was saying straight away this was Putin, and the British media ran with that and proved not to be true. People are starting to look at this guy and saying, is he entirely, can we take everything he says as true?
Yeah, I think that's a big question now. You know, I was down the pub when that happened, saw it, you know, coming on the TV. Had a little bit of questioning intel coming through and sort of said to people, hold your horses, I don't think this is... But what surprised me was the lack of interest in the room. You know, when something like that happens, it's all World War III. I think the man down the pub is more concerned about what's going to be happening in his next paycheck rather than what's happening you know, several thousand miles away. And of course that has an impact in some terms, in terms of national security, but is all so far removed from us at home. I don't think the PM quite realises the mood of the public.
It's not that far removed from us when you consider what is happening to our cost of fuel and energy in this country. It has a direct implication because of the reaction that Putin has made to the fact that the West is supporting Ukraine. So is this a point to be backing off and to be thinking of not really supporting them?
I think what you've got to consider is, who's imposed those sanctions on the West. Putin didn't impose the sanctions, of course. We imposed the sanctions on ourselves, and we're now headed into an energy crisis as the result of our own actions. And of course, it could be said that is...
Our actions? What are our actions?
Yeah.
Sorry, I have to pick you up on that.
Sure.
But it is the actions of Putin, presumably, who is actually stopping the gas that he's sending to Germany, which is, in effect, not coming to us either. So what are our actions?
The issue with the sanctions is that they've helped the ruble to double, and they've helped Putin get far better deals with other countries who are still in the Russia sphere, such as China. So have we really hindered Russian progress with those sanctions? I think if that was our aim, what we've done is more to shoot ourselves in the foot rather than just to, help end a war in Ukraine.
Hey, Joseph, and while I've got you here, this other big story we're going to talk about all morning. What about this talk about closer Swiss-style ties with the European Union? Is that what the British people voted for?
Not at all. I mean, we're getting to go over old territory, aren't we? We're starting to look backwards towards Brexit, which is not something we want to be doing right now. And I think any closer ties with the EU have to be one of a relation with a trading partner purely, and not as some kind of symbiotic relationship. We don't want that again.
But isn't it trade that they're talking about?
It is trade, but what we have to be careful with is the legislation that follows with that trade. We don't want to be writing in more EU law into our own law. We're trying to get rid of EU law. That's been our goal for several years now. So it's a great deal to be had. Of course, the EU is going to be a valuable trading partner, but we have to look at how we implement that.
But lots of people out there, including Lord Frost and Nigel Farage, saying this is the real step back towards European integration. Nigel saying this should be the obliteration of the Conservative Party.
Well, I don't think the Conservatives need much help with that. They seem to be doing a good job of it already. But at this point, I think what we're looking at is a return to more sort of supranational politics. This is the return of Rishi, the Davos man, who, of course, wants to, make sure that everyone on the world stage knows that he's one of them, let's say. And I think this is a lot of virtue signalling within the first few weeks of his premiership.
Well, Joseph, that's a lot to chew on there. And I know, thank you for your time. Now, I know, Angela, we're going to be talking about this all morning.
We are, because of the poll that we've got running.
Yeah, the poll is running. And
we should remind people about what it is, actually.
Yeah, the poll is live right now, so you can vote. Do you want to change your mind? Would you change your mind if Brexit were to happen again? I know there's been a YouGov poll out saying 60% would, and you're very vocal about that. You agree with that? You'd like to change our position?
No, I don't say I necessarily want to change our position, but I do think that if people have felt that they've changed their minds about Brexit, they should be given the opportunity to say so. Because, and in fact, what's happening at the moment, as you know, I feel very strongly that the government should actually not be, it should be not dogmatic about its political situation. If we, at the moment, have a real financial crisis here at home, we should be pragmatic about the finances. And if the government feels that by just relaxing a little bit, we're not saying we're going back into the European Union. We're saying let's relax some of the regulations so that at least trade here at home and businesses here at home can start to expand, and we can actually start to have that,
but you see that
turnaround that we need financially.
That is the softening of position that a lot of people feared would happen when Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak came. They're accused of being globalists, of being wanted to reintegrate. And that is happening. We've got loads more of this to come anyway throughout the morning. As you can tell,
we want to hear from you
all year. So there's more to come, including the famous faces who are supporting and not so supportive of the World Cup.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK will be wet and cloudy in the east with rain clearing, sunshine and showers in the west. Here are the details. Across southwest England, after a dry start to the day, blustery showers will spread eastwards. These could be heavy at times, with a risk of a thunderstorm for western coasts. Cloud and rain will linger across southeast England at first, though once this clears, it will be a dry morning with some sunny spells. There'll be a mixture of sunshine and scattered blustery showers across South Wales this morning. These showers could be heavy and thundery. After early rain and cloud clears, it will be a dry and fine start across the Midlands, with sunny spells. Scattered showers that could be heavy at times will affect the west later. Cloud and rain will clear northeast England through the first part of the morning. This will leave a dry period with some sunny spells ahead of showers moving in from the west later. A band of rain will clear southern Scotland early this morning. This will be followed by a mixture of sunshine and scattered showers, and some of these could be heavy. There'll be a mixture of sunshine and scattered blustery showers across Northern Ireland this morning. Some of these showers could be heavy, with hail and thunder at times. So showers will continue to spread eastwards throughout this afternoon before easing into the evening with clear spells developing. That's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Angela Rippon and Martin Daubney.
Well, singer Robbie Williams is defending his controversial decision to sing in Qatar during the World Cup. This comes after a string of A-listers rejected lucrative offers to perform at the opening ceremony.
Now, the singer has said that it would be hypocritical to not go despite international outrage over Qatar's alleged track record of human rights violations.
Well, our showbiz reporter Stephanie Techi is here with more. Now, Stephanie, lots of people have been hugely criticised. David Beckham took 100 million. He's been absolutely coated off. It could be the end of him, they say. But Robbie, I mean, he's a singer. Should he be allowed to perform as normal?
I think with Robbie, the problem is when you say that you totally it's OK for you to perform at such places, if there's future LGBT issues, Robbie cannot then say he's going to be campaigning against it, because then people will always remind him performing at such a place like this.
He's very popular with that music.
He is very popular, and he's got a big fan base like that. So that's why most singers like Rod Stewart, who turned down almost £1 million to perform at Qatar, said it's a human rights issue, it's an LGBT issue, and also it's a women's issue. So that's 3 of his main fan bases there. So you're very at risk of snubbing your fan base for doing such things. But in Robbie's defence, he's like, it would be very hypocritical for me to go, because he performed in Russia in 2018, and that was just after Putin invaded Crimea. And again, he's been able to bounce back, he's been able to go around the world, and he says, if I keep on having this kind of attitude where I can't go to places where there's human rights issue, I'll be just about be able to perform in my kitchen. That is the reality for a singer in such a kind of decision when they have to make that.
I mean, let's face it, he doesn't need the money. I mean, he's never ever going to have to... He's not short of a shekel or two, is he?
I don't know, because that's what fans are saying.
But he's not.
It's about the paycheck.
Come on, he's not. But the thing is, I suppose, he could argue, you know, I should be able to go and sing. The England football players haven't said we're not going to go and play football.
Yeah.
See, what's the difference, really?
If we really want to get to the nitty-gritty of this and we really want to support what's going, be vocal about what's happening in Qatar, people are saying, well, people shouldn't be watching it. Then people shouldn't... Well, how about the fans who've gone over there to watch this? Like, everyone could be criticised in one shape or form about this World Cup. So if we really want to get to the nitty-gritty, everyone's a bit guilty as charged of supporting this World Cup.
OK, now, as we've got you here, this Twitter poll to reinstate Donald Trump, it's worth talking about, not only because he's a massive celebrity himself, but a lot of celebrities, especially American celebrities, have been very, very upset about his return. They're fleeing the platform, they're going off having a bit of a hissy fit. What's your take on this situation?
Well, to be honest, I think a lot of celebrities were very suspicious from when Elon Musk took over, because they were like, this is going to be... He's going to bring some controversial stuff in, and moves like this just proves to them, actually, this is why we haven't wanted to wait and stick around to see what Elon Musk will do with Twitter, because this is just the beginning of having someone like Trump back, who has, been known for being offensive on Twitter. Is like endorsing that again. And a lot of celebrities don't want to be caught up in that, because, everyone's a bit vocal at the moment with anyone who's not, sticking to the woke agenda, and Donald Trump is anti-woke. So... In that sense, celebrities want to be anti-Twitter now.
And he's got rid of so many members of staff who are not there actually to monitor what goes out. In fact, I was listening to radio very early this morning, and they were actually discussing the possibility that Twitter is going to disappear altogether because it's actually crumbling from the foundations.
It is, and, this is only in a matter of about 2 weeks since Elon's taken over Twitter, so it makes me think in a year or so, how's it going to be looking and feeling? And I just think a lot of people are not feeling comfortable. I know Elon has said that he is pro-free speech, but a lot of people are seeing it opposite.
His form was free speech.
Yeah. But there were 18 million votes, so, I mean, it's democracy in action. It's free speech, democracy in action, surely.
It is.
We can argue that all day, I think.
Until Trump releases his first tweet, maybe some of those numbers will go down.
It'll get banned again.
Steffi, thanks. You're going to be with us throughout the morning, aren't you? Because there's so much more to come here on the programme, including the papers with Claire Muldoon and Fraser Myers.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
Stop talking. My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Angela Rippon and myself, Martin Daubney.
So let's take a look at today's front pages. The Times saying, that Britain will mull over the Swiss-style ties with Brussels as it believes the EU relations are thawing.
And the Observer writes that Starmer will abolish the House of Lords to restore trust in politics.
A bonfire of the NHS pen pushers, says the Mail, as ministers vow to axe red tape in the health service to save taxpayers' money.
And on the Express, it goes with Shameless as they discuss the FIFA boss's comments on human rights critics in Qatar ahead of the World Cup.
Time to go inside the papers now with broadcaster Claire Muldoon, and joining her is the deputy editor of Spiked, Fraser Myers. You are with us. You're both in the studio. Sorry,
they're both here.
Yes, they're both here. I thought we're
going to kick off, Fraser, kick off with this big story about Brexit. Before we do that, just a reminder, you can vote in our poll. Would you vote again for Brexit? Would you vote the same? At the moment, 80% in favour of Brexit in that poll. Get involved. Fraser, that goes straight into this story on the front of the Sunday Times today. Britain mulls Swiss-style ties with Brussels. Is there a soft movement to rejoin the European Union?
Well, that's the big worry, that it's sort of moving towards a kind of closer alignment with Europe. Now, in and of itself, that doesn't sound too terrifying, but if it means accepting more EU rules on on various things like how we run our economy, EU regulations, migration is a big factor in this, then that would be a bit of a betrayal to the people who voted for Brexit, to the Brexit that has taken God knows how many years to hammer out. We've had one referendum, we've had European elections in favour of Brexit. We had the 2019 election, which was pretty decisively in favour of Brexit. How many times do the public need to say that we want to be out of the EU, we want to have control over our own laws and borders and money, and only for them, we're a year and a half after we've signed the free trade deal to start crawling back to Brussels? I think it's quite worrying.
Isn't this an indication, though, that we actually got it wrong when we signed the deal? It was done in such a way that, in fact, it was not done with Britain's best interests at heart, and they made a mistake over it, and they're sort of backpedaling all the time to try and make up for that.
Well, obviously the deal is nowhere close to perfect.
No.
I mean, the problems over the Northern Ireland Protocol, in particular, point to that. But I think the direction of the travel of the deal was actually a kind of pleasant surprise. That there is a cleaner break from Europe than a lot of people expected from Boris Johnson, and that's quite a positive thing. And that's something that should be maintained, because if we're talking about a Swiss-style relationship, that does mean endless negotiations with the EU. That does
and it means paying them too.
It means paying them.
Yes.
It means coming closer to the single market. It means giving up on the chance to diverge away to think about new industries for the future that we might be able to have outside of the European Union, and above all, it means losing sovereignty, losing our democratic say over how we run our economy.
Is there any indication that that's where they intend to go, or is it just that actually they're trying to make it easier for businesses in Britain at the moment during the financial crisis, to get a bit more money and get a bit more business?
Swiss style means basically having freedom of movement, having freedom of exchange of information and absorption of EU legislation while not being a member. Now, we didn't vote for that. Anyway, enough of my high horse. I want to bring you in on this one, Claire.
Look,
wherever you stand, this is about democracy, isn't it?
Look, the reality is it's a bit of Europe still holding on and behaving like a child, I think, actually, to be honest with you. I voted for Brexit. I would still vote for Brexit because I think that is the UK's best interests. I think the EU as a model is broken. You've got Turkey wanting to join the EU. You've got Italy not being able to afford being a member of the EU. The EU cannot maintain. And then don't even get me started on what's happening in Scotland. Nicola Sturgeon says if they get independence from her pretendy ref that she wants, that's currently sitting at the Supreme Court to see if she can have another one, which was supposed to be once in a generation, she wants to, be absorbed into the EU. Now, there's one country that will not allow that, And of course, that's Spain, because Spain will not veto an independent. Yes, exactly, Martin. And they won't. So the EU as a model, I think in reality, we all realise is broken. It doesn't work. So they're just holding us, I think, to account. And they're being quite childish in it. Well, you wanted to leave, so we're going to make it really difficult for you to leave at all costs. But the actual cost of this is a very human cost, because we need the migration, we need the freedom of movement for labour to fill jobs that we have here, because people in this country, I think, are work shy and they don't want to do the jobs that are here, and they should. And we should be able to do it.
I think lots of people at home would have been agreeing with you there, Claire, right until the moment you called Brits workshop. That's fair enough. Hey, look, something strange.
Not all Brits. I mean, there's 4 of us working very hard here.
Exactly.
Today.
But it is true. I mean, and we've had this discussion before, I think, that certainly in the hospitality industry, young people don't necessarily see the hospitality industry becoming waiters and see it as a career path. Whereas, you know, most of our restaurants and hotels actually depended on Italian, French, Spanish waiters.
Hang on a minute. Fraser, wasn't one of the points of Brexit to start paying British workers a fair wage and not be so reliant on cheap foreign labour? Well,
funny enough, even the head of the Remain campaign let this slip early on in the referendum. People might remember Stuart Rose saying one of the consequences of Brexit could be that Britons get higher wages, and that wouldn't be a good thing, was his view.
Terrible thing to happen.
Was that the Stuart Rose who sat in Question Time and said that, you know, we don't have an issue with migration in this country, immigration in this country?
That
we
was
need
him,
to, you know, it was ridiculous.
Well,
Let's move on to your newspaper now.
Yeah, we can talk about Brexit all morning, couldn't we?
Yeah, but we're not going to.
No.
I'd like
We've got lots of other things to talk about this morning, including, Claire, the story that's in The Observer today.
The Observer, right, we're going to The Observer. Starmer will abolish Lords to restore trust in politics. If he thinks that's going to restore any trust with the British democratic electorate, then I don't know. He's on Clyde Cuckoo land, to be honest with you. I mean, abolish the Lords. There's loads. There's quite a lot of evidence to show that we should be abolishing the House of Lords. OK, in terms of what it can do, because obviously it can stymie, it can stop votes going through from the House of Commons, then the House of Lords for the white papers, green papers, all the multicoloured papers that go through to set our laws and legislation in this country. When we see some of the appointments that have been made into the House of Lords.
Chums.
Yes, you know, Lebedev, Boris Johnson's favourite owner of the Evening Standard.
Yeah, that's right.
Which George Osborne also works on. So we've got that. And to be honest with you, I don't think that's such a bad thing. But if he thinks that's going to restore politics, he's got a...
Well, I find myself agreeing with Starmer on this. But it's not often that you'll hear me say that. And in fact, Claire Fox, I know one of my good friends, Brexit Party, who's now a Baroness, she's actually in there and she wants to abolish it. Because quite often, Fraser, you know full well that the Lords is used as a blocking party. It doesn't let legislation through and it stands against the electorate.
Well, you know, Oliver Cromwell, when he first abolished the Lords, said that it was useless and dangerous to the people of England, and I think that is as true now as it was then. You know, it exists to stymie democracy. It exists to...
And not only that, don't forget, it had the VIP route for PPE that Michelle Mone took advantage of when she was in the House of Lords. So there's a lot of skullduggery still going on.
Let me play devil's advocate here and say...
Please do, Angela.
And if we don't have a House of Lords or some other body, what is going to be the check and balance on what goes on in the House of Commons, which is not always democratic and not always with the best will of the people?
Well, there are other countries that have a sort of unicameral system
we need something,
they have I don't think we do actually. I think I think if you take a country like New Zealand, or I think Sweden has only one lower house of parliament. It has been tried and tested. You don't need another body sitting above the Commons, sitting in judgment on essentially on who we voted for already.
Well, not even sitting in judgment sometimes, but bringing another point of view and actually being able to bring if you like, an expert point of view.
I think that our MPs need to take responsibility for the laws that they create and not expect some other body to sort of check their homework, if you see what I mean. I disagree that more experts need to be brought into it, especially into the lawmaking process itself. You know, they should not be signing off on legislation. Sometimes, I mean, one of the problems with the modern House of Lords is that it's good it's not entirely full of aristocrats anymore, but it can be just as bad when it's full of experts and the great and the good, so to speak, because those people think of themselves as extremely important. They're just as meddlesome in our laws as.
But if we look to where did the experts get us during the COVID lockdowns and all the rest of it, I think let's move on, because talk about more.
No, Martin, let's
we need to talk about more pointless bureaucrats.
Claire has a point of view.
No, in the words of Lord Sugar, you're fired.
Well, it's only my second day. Let's move on to this story, because this is something that's really getting people going, and that's NHS wastage. The sacred NHS. We can never look at their cuts or funding.
We went on our doorsteps, we clapped, we did everything. There's no problem in the NHS with regards to funding. It's never been funded more than it is now. What is the issue with the NHS? It's mismanagement of those funds. It's a clunky Luddite IT system that's used for different states, different models within the NHS, different trusts is the word I was looking for. It should be demolished. I mean, the NHS is a wonderful thing, OK? We all pay for it. It's not free, because we pay for it through our tax and national insurance contributions. But it is one of the best things this country has. And yet, everyone reveres the sacred NHS. But it's funny, there's no other country in the world that actually uses the model. They don't use the model because it's broken. It doesn't work financially.
So this story,
it doesn't work.
This story here is specifically about the middle management. We hear a lot about diversity officers, net zero officers.
I spoke about this yesterday. Absolutely pointless. We shouldn't be spending money, taxpayers' money, on the NHS for diversity inclusion. That should be part of our intrinsic rights as human beings.
The Equality Act exists.
Covers it. OK? We don't need any more diversity or equality. I'm all for social mobility more than diversity, because I think poverty is one of the biggest issues in this country, and social mobility really has to help people move on, and we can only do that through education. But everybody has access to the NHS. But I'm sorry, there is also a glut of doctors, but of patients. I mean, how often, if you've got symptoms, do you actually go, Dr. Google, what do I think I have? We become more autonomous. We become doctors ourselves, almost. We're self-diagnosing. And then, we've got headlines saying NHS is on its knees, we can't get GP appointments. It's all this doom and gloom, when in reality, it's never been more funded than it is now, and we've still got amazing doctors, amazing nurses. But I do
too many managers.
Too many managers. Bring back to matrons and let hospitals smell like hospitals.
I wonder if, Fraser, does any political party, you think, have the appetite or the guts to even take on the task of NHS reformation?
Why have we got so much politics in the NHS?
Exactly.
I would love to take the NHS out of politics and say that politicians, all right, they have to give us the overall budget, but politicians should not be interfering in the NHS. They've used it as a sacred cow.
Yes.
Ever since it was started in the 1940s.
By Nye Bevan.
And, Nye Bevan had a brilliant idea to start with. But actually, the system that we have working now, as you say, Claire, is not anywhere else in the world. Other people in the world other countries in the world have much better systems than we do. Why don't we learn from them and jettison the bits of our NHS which do not work anymore?
Yes. There'll be a round of applause at home for that.
We've got to have some humility here and stop saying that the NHS is the best system.
It's not anymore. It was.
I'm very much in favour of healthcare free at the point of use. I think that principle is an excellent one to maintain, but the way that it operates, it means at the moment, there was a report, I think, last week, I think it was in the Financial Times, that said that we in Britain have the worst access to healthcare in Europe. I imagine that, even though it's free.
Yeah.
And I do, I'm pleased by this report saying that they're going to get rid of some of the bureaucracy, but I'll believe it when I see it, quite frankly, because...
They'll bring in another committee to
say...
There'll be another load of experts.
A committee and an organising committee over the subcommittee. And, you know, these people are really hard to get rid of, you know, in every area of the public sector.
And why are we paying the chief executives of some of these trusts more than we pay the Prime Minister of the country? We're paying
more
them
than we pay some doctors, consultants and nurses.
We've got time for one quick story before we move on. Claire, let's turn to yours. This is about the clampdown on smartphones for kids. Is the answer to go back in time and get one of those old brick phones for your kid?
Well, yes. You know, this is a report by parents should buy their children old-fashioned phones without internet connection, the Children's Commissioner has said. And, you know, the Children's Commissioner is Dame Rachel D'Souza, and I agree. I've got 4 children. Thankfully, my youngest is 18, my eldest is 24. I'm out of the loop. Yeah. However, I was in the loop when they were first coming out and was like, oh my gosh, what version of the iPhone do you have? Internet connection, etc., etc. And from information and for knowing where they were, it was great as a management tool, as a mother. Brilliant. However, we had a strict no phone policy, eating supper at the table. All phones were left downstairs or with me overnight because you have, as a parent, you have to. And the deluge of information, there's good things, obviously, about the internet, but there's also horrendous things that children have been able to make access to that are not any help for hardwiring prepubescent brains that need structure, that need discipline, and they've got access to 24/7 porn. They've got access to really awful things online.
And actually, if you talk to very enlightened head teachers like Catherine Burble-Singh, who's the mobility commissioner now, she says that 90% of trouble in school playgrounds is caused by social media abuse.
Yes, everything is recorded. Everything is recorded now. When I was young, I'm now 50. When I was young, we went out, my parents didn't have a clue what I was doing, and that was a good thing because it made me able to grow up, develop, and, you know, develop a sense of right and wrong, and also have that risk, you know, the ability to know when something wasn't quite right. Now they're so desensitised.
But there are some parents that want these phones for kids because they track and trace them. they trace their kids in real time.
No, I'm sorry, it's not helpful. It really isn't helpful, and I'm saying that. My son went to Twickenham yesterday and he's still not home. So it would be good in certain respects to be able to track and trace. However, you know, kids need to grow up. Yeah. They need to have that sense of risk.
I think what kids need is also a sense of space away from adults. Yeah. And they don't have that anymore, and now their phone is their only space where they can essentially...
It's an echo chamber.
Yeah, which is a shame. That's the tragedy, really. So I think, you know, in theory, yes, buy kids old-fashioned phones, don't let them on the smartphone. In practice, how long is that going to last with the nagging?
I think...
You know, if all of their friends have got the smartphone, if all of their friends, want to talk to them on WhatsApp, Twitter, Facebook...
Do you know, we've got an issue
I'm sounding like an old fuddy-duddy.
No, you're not.
Young people don't use those things.
We're now in a situation where it's very difficult to recruit male teachers, right?
Yeah,
and I think a lot of that is down to the fact that there's so much social media. The children need to stop bringing phones to schools. The schools need to play a part in this as well.
That's definitely true.
You know, leave your phone at home or leave it with get them locked up because it's not helpful to staff.
My cousin's wife is a head teacher at a school in Vauxhall, just down the road, and she has a very strict policy. When you go into school in the morning, your phone gets put in a box.
Yes.
You don't get it all day.
Good.
It's like, you know, the parents complain. If you don't go to a different school.
Yes, exactly.
You know, it's like no phones in the school.
There's no need for it.
It really helps. It's really cut down on trouble. It's really cut down on anxiety.
Yeah.
So
and if they want to spend time on social media in their home time, then that's fine.
And it's cut down on the access to the trolls who send children into a situation where they feel they have to commit suicide. Hey, it's great having you both here doing the papers. You're going to be with us for the rest of the morning.
We are.
See you a bit later on. Thanks very much.
Excellent.
Thank you. Now, a high-tech bouncy pavement which can charge mobile phones, which is what we're just talking about, by turning footsteps into electricity. Believe it or not, it's been revealed in a UK town. Can you believe that?
Sounds like a great idea. Well, that's at Telford and Wrekin Council has installed the 6-metre stretch of smart paving which generates energy whenever pedestrians walk on it. It then powers charging points next to benches where people can plug in their mobile phones.
Well, to test this out quite literally now, we're joined by one of our GB viewers, Stephen Dean, who's a local resident, and he's going to give it a test walk especially for us. Hello, Stephen.
Yes, good morning to both of you. Hope you're well.
We are now.
I'm talking to you this morning live from the town centre here in Shropshire, and I'm going to show you this very high-tech little bit of...
Okay.
So, as you can see the pavement here. I'm actually going to be walking over it, and you'll see that the pavement, if you look to the left and right of the pavement, it's actually lighting up.
Look at that!
And I feel as though I'm going to be zoomed off to space any minute. So basically...
beam me up, Scotty!
This pavement here is actually part of a £4 million project in conjunction with a private company and Telford and Wrekin Council. The actual section of pavement is linked to the new railway footbridge connected to the railway bridge as part of the 50th anniversary or birthday of the town. Now, I'm just walking over to one of the benches where you actually plug in your mobile phone. If I can just go down here and maybe show you this little catch. There's a little catch there.
USB port.
USB port. And you sit down on the bench and you plug in your mobile phone. You don't need your power bank. There's 2 benches here that you can plug into. And when you actually walk over this bridge, what you're doing, as you rightly pointed out earlier, you are actually creating what's called kinetic energy. And that energy is being absorbed by these very special tiles that are sort of diamond-shaped. And you can feel the vibration. I'll just walk over the section again. And you can see it lighting up on either side. And there is a link, clearly, between the section of pavement that goes under the general area here, where you can actually sit down and plug in and use your mobile phone. It's quite incredible.
I have to say, Stephen, you are amazing.
Yeah.
I am loving what you are doing with the camera work there. You are doing a great outside broadcast for us. Have you ever thought of having a job in broadcasting? Because you're pretty good at it, Stephen.
Smashed it, yeah.
But the thing is, have you actually charged your phone with this, or are you just giving us a demonstration? Has it worked for you?
Yes, it works. I've actually plugged it in. It all works. And, I've actually got a power bank. If I can perhaps just show that to the camera here. Let's have a look. So
brilliant.
This power bank, what this bit of technology does, it actually eliminates the need for a very heavy power bank. Certainly the one I've got is quite heavy. So obviously many people that are traveling on the train or wherever it is, that they're used to actually plugging into the train, if you like, into the USB port. But where can you actually think in the United Kingdom or anywhere where you can actually, okay, I've not got a power bank, I need to have an important conversation. I live in Telford. It's great for the people here. I can go and sit on the bench, plug in, not worry about the fact I haven't got a power bank, and away we go. We're connected. We can have a conversation.
That's great. Now, is it, and presumably it's cheaper, is it, by doing this than having to plug it in at home? It's saving you electricity, is it?
Well, it is, because you see, the great thing about this technology, it's a lot of fun, because for the very first time, a human being can actually transfer that kinetic energy that we all have with movement into the ground, and we are actually powering a piece of very high-tech equipment so that we can actually use our mobile phones. It really is fantastic.
Well, I'll tell you what, Stephen, if you're not, part of the Telford outreach programme to sell this around the world, then you should be. You're a great salesman, and what I think would be great would be to put your children on this, like hamsters, and have the children sort of generate loads of electricity for. See, I thought this was the gimmick at first, Andrew. But actually, this is a brilliant thing.
Yeah, it is.
It really makes you think about the transfer of energy from yourself into power. It makes you think about burning off energy, you know, and turning it into electricity. So, how's it gone down with the locals? Is it popular, or is it seems a bit of a money waste or a bit of a gimmick?
Well, you can imagine. It's created a lot of excitement, really, here. I mean, the thing about Telford and Wrekin Council, they are a very innovative council here. This is really the old and the new. We're surrounded. We're in the area of the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution here. Just down the road, you've got the world's first iron bridge. It was actually constructed as though it was made of wood with dovetail joints and rivets. That's literally just down the road. And then up the road, you've just got Shrewsbury, where the architect was based to actually construct the iron bridge. And then you've got this very modern town in Telford with all this
Stephen, we're going to have to interrupt.
Technology.
I mean,
You're brilliant, Stephen. Absolutely
You've been going like a human dynamo all morning on this. Thank you very much, mate. That was superb. Thank you very much. Wow.
And still more to come, including the countdown to the Qatar World Cup after the weather.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK will be wet and cloudy in the east with rain clearing, sunshine and showers in the west. Here are the details. Across southwest England, after a dry start to the day, blustery showers will spread eastwards. These could be heavy at times, with a risk of a thunderstorm for western coasts. Cloud and rain will linger across southeast England at first, though once this clears, it will be a dry morning with some sunny spells. There'll be a mixture of sunshine and scattered blustery showers across South Wales this morning. These showers could be heavy and thundery. After early rain and cloud clears, it will be a dry and fine start across the Midlands, with sunny spells. Scattered showers that could be heavy at times will affect the west later. Cloud and rain will clear northeast England through the first part of the morning. This will leave a dry period with some sunny spells ahead of showers moving in from the west later. A band of rain will clear southern Scotland early this morning. This will be followed by a mixture of sunshine and scattered showers, and some of these could be heavy. There'll be a mixture of sunshine and scattered blustery showers across Northern Ireland this morning. Some of these showers could be heavy, with hail and thunder at times. So showers will continue to spread eastwards throughout this afternoon before easing into the evening with clear spells developing. That's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deems & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
On radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
The World Cup kicks off in Qatar today.
Good morning. It's 7 o'clock on Sunday, the 20th of November. This is Breakfast on GB News with Angela Rippon and myself, Martin Daubney.
And we're live across the whole of the UK on both your television and your radio, which means that wherever you are, you can take us with you. Now, here's what's making the news this morning.
There's just hours to go now until the much-anticipated Football World Cup kicks off. The first to take place in winter and the first to be hosted by a Muslim country. We'll bring you everything you need to know.
Rishi Sunak has met with Ukraine's President Zelensky in Kyiv, promising them £50 million in defence aid. It's his first visit to the country since becoming Prime Minister.
Meanwhile, the government are planning Swiss-style relationships with the European Union in a bid to attempt to boost trade relations.
Now, all morning, we're going to be asking you, in fact, we're already asking you, if you would vote differently for Brexit now, given the opportunity. Having your say means just going to our Twitter poll. We are at GB News, and we've had how many so far?
And we've had 1,600 votes, and currently it's 81% in favour of Brexit. And also in the show, it's been 30 years since the Windsor Castle fire, which destroyed 115 rooms, including 9 staterooms, back in 1992. Our reporter will be live from the Queen's former residence.
Well, as ever, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing us at gbviews@gbnews.co.uk.
So, to our top story. After over a decade of controversy, the 2022 FIFA World Cup starts today in Qatar as the hosts face Ecuador in Doha.
Human rights groups have criticised its treatment of foreign workers as well as its stance on same-sex relationships.
Well, England kick off their World Cup tomorrow versus Iran, which is set to be marred by their ongoing unrest and protests at home. And we can speak to former referee and FIFA instructor Janie Frampton alongside our sports presenter Aidan McGee. So first, let's go to you, Janie. So good morning. Welcome to the show.
Janie, good morning. I mean, have you ever actually? I know you're a world-class FIFA referee. Have you ever actually refereed a game in a Muslim country?
Sorry, Angela, I missed that. I missed that question.
I'll ask you again. Don't worry. I was saying, have you yourself ever actually refereed a game in a Muslim country with Muslim players?
I have. I was involved in a stand a long time ago when they were repatriating, I guess, the stadium because it had been used for some terrible things. So they wanted to get it back to football. So that was the only time that I've actually refereed in a country that was, a challenge. Yeah. Goodness, there's an old photo, Angela.
Because you see, I think we're interested in knowing what are the restrictions likely to be on the women who are going to be refereeing? I mean, the clothes, for instance, we can see referees there, they're in shorts. Well, the Muslims don't like women to show parts of their bodies, do they? So are you aware of any of the restrictions that are going to be put on these women referees?
I'm hoping they don't, Angela, because that just wouldn't be fair. If they're going to take this as women officiating a manned tournament per se, not because they're women, but because they're good referees, then they should be wearing the same clothing as their male counterparts. It shouldn't be different.
So, Janie,
I don't want to see women in long... Sorry?
We're talking to you today because this is the first time, isn't it? This is the first World Cup when women have been allowed to officiate. Now, was that a decision taken prior to this tournament by FIFA, or is it something that's taking place in Qatar in an attempt, if you like, to kind of whitewash their somewhat questionable politics around gender?
I think this has been coming because we've seen some women already officiating on World Cup qualifiers and UEFA Championship games for men. So I think it's been coming, but I also, the sceptic in me thinks that this could be a little bit of a tick box as well. Look at us, we're allowing women to have men's competition in a Muslim country.
Yeah, and I mean, there's that question also of touching, isn't there? What happens if the women need to touch other Muslim men who are, part of the game? Because that's no-no, isn't it, in Qatar?
It is a no-no, but I think this needs to be really clear. This is football. This Muslim, whether you're not, this has to be really clearly a game of football, refereed by a woman. Because at times, a player will put their hand on your shoulder, for example, and those things.
Unfortunately, you keep freezing on us, which is a real nuisance. But I think we're getting it. Can you just tell us if we can keep you there long enough? How do you think it's actually going to go down in the country?
Sorry, I missed the question, Angela.
How do you think the idea is going to go down in the country?
I don't think it's going to go down well. I think we've already had a view of Qatari royal family stepping in over beer at the last minute, and I don't think this is going to go down too well.
OK, well, thank you very much for joining us today. We had some technical difficulties there, but good luck with it all. Cheers. OK, let's
very much.
Cut back to the studio. Aidan, this is just another dog's dinner situation. It further means we're talking about the politics, the gender stuff, the racism. And what do you make of all of this? I mean, is it tokenism? Is it a move forward for the game? Or is it yet more white noise that gets in the way of the sport?
Well, yeah, it's certainly white noise that gets in the way of the sport to some degree. I mean, football in particular has been hijacked by politics in recent years. We must be clear that sport and politics is inextricably linked. You can't separate it very easily, but it's generally a bad thing, Martin.
Yeah.
You shouldn't really encourage it, and that's exactly what the Premier League in particular have done in recent years. The FIFA have been behind the curve in that regard, but obviously they've walked into a fire by awarding the World Cup to Qatar, which they wouldn't have foreseen when they made the award back in 2010. As regards female officials, I mean, we shouldn't be so uppity in this country. I was at a press conference at Luton Town in 2007. Mike Newell, the Luton Town manager, came out afterwards and issued a diatribe against the assistant referee, Amy Rayner, for which he was forced to apologise afterwards. So 2007 is not a lifetime ago. And so we have to consider that our attitudes towards female officials were not particularly modern in recent times. It's been cleared up now. And, I think that looking at Janie's experience as well, I think it won't go down well in Qatar. But you have to give FIFA a bit of credit because they haven't done this before at a FIFA tournament anyway, and they're breaking the mould this time.
But it is going to be good for women, actually, within the game, isn't it? And we can now go to our reporter, Paul Hawkins, who's actually live in Qatar to tell us a bit more. He's not ready there yet. Well,
not ready there.
Don't worry.
Right,
we will be talking to him a bit later on.
Come back to the studio because you say about politics and sport. I mean, the front page of the Express today. Look at this. This is the FIFA boss Gianni Infantino had this extraordinary hour-long diatribe yesterday.
We touched on it yesterday, but it kind of grew legs overnight, really, as it sort of filtered around the world. I mean, whoever looked over this speech needs to have a real close, long, hard look at themselves, because he went on for about an hour and he suggested that Europe has been guilty of sins against the rest of the world for 3,000 years.
Racism.
I don't really know how he knows that, but he says that he should be feeling guilty for the next 3,000 years. It was basically a justification for giving the World Cup to Qatar. Now, he was part of that decision, but he wasn't the president at the time. That was Sepp Blatter. The line in the sand to move that World Cup away from Qatar, this World Cup away from Qatar, was 2015. That's when Sepp Blatter was removed from office. Infantino, Gianni Infantino, the Italian lawyer, the guy that we're talking about here, he was moved into that role. He was meant to represent a new broom. And with, 7 years to go until the next tournament, which we find ourselves starting today, they had ample time to move that event. If you think back to 1986, Colombia was due to hold the 1986 World Cup, but due to unforeseen circumstances at the time in terms of infrastructure, politics, finance. It was moved away at short notice and given to Mexico, and they held their second tournament in 16 years. So if they could do it at short notice in 1986, surely they could do it with 7 years to spare in the modern era.
You're saying it is just, he's trying to justify the decision, isn't he?
Oh, without doubt, yeah.
Doing it and completely tone deaf to everything else that's going on
as
around.
I say, I don't believe he read the room. I don't believe he could consider the backlash. This will come to define his presidency. I don't think he'll be in the job that much longer. If FIFA is serious about modernising, that is.
Well, fortunately, we can now join our reporter Paul Hawkins, who is live in Qatar, to tell us a bit more. Paul, I don't know if you've been hearing the discussion that we've got here, but clearly the politics that are involved in all of this are sort of, in a way, wiping out the football at this stage before they actually get the guys on the pitch. What's the feeling there in the country where you are, among the fans and generally among the people that you're meeting?
So, just to be clear, 80% of the people that we talk to in Qatar, Angela, are expats. And I have to say, having spoken to a lot of British expats here, they're quite defensive about the country. They are quite critical of the way the British media have only shown negative stories about the country here. Yes, they say there are issues with the country. Of course, we can talk about human rights and we talk about LGBTQ+ rights, and also the fact that alcohol is banned in some stadiums, and they said it was going to be allowed. And of course, there are issues and there are problems around that. And we say issues and problems, of course. Alcohol is haram in Islam. So it's something that was always to be expected when you came to Qatar. But they say that this is a country that has made some progress. It has spent a great deal of money on hosting the tournament, and that actually there are many good things about Qatar that simply don't get reported. So here, the people that live here, the expats that live here, and the 20% of the country that are Qataris, they're very excited about hosting the World Cup. I have to say, the preparations have been interesting to watch. We've just walked along this bit, and actually, if I tell you where we are at the moment, we're somewhere called the Corniche, which is like the waterfront. It's miles and miles and miles long stretches all the way around the bay towards that area that kind of, I was going to say, looks a little bit like Canary Wharf, but frankly that'd be doing it an injustice. The huge glass buildings in the background, and if you look right into the distance, this is where the fan festivals are going to be as they head up around the top of the Corniche. In the distance, we just came walking along here, and there were guys by the side of the road stamping in bits of grass into the ground, trying to get it ready. So, yeah, preparations are last minute, and maybe everything won't be ready. But certainly the people that you speak to here are very excited about what's happening.
We're going to be able to talk to you, I think, at length later in the programme, Paul, so thanks very much for joining us. I have to say, it looks wonderfully sunny there, when it's pretty horrible here in Britain. Anyhow, the time is now 12 minutes past 7. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
After negotiations through the night, a deal has finally been agreed at COP27 to help poor countries deal with the impact of climate change. The so-called Loss and Damage Fund will help developing nations bear the cost of disasters such as drought and flooding. However, a decision on exactly which countries should pay has been left until COP28 next year.
Senior government officials are considering getting a Swiss-style trading relationship with Europe, according to the Sunday Times. Switzerland's trade agreements with the EU give them direct access to parts of the internal market. The UK changing to this deal would be a 10-year-long process. Downing Street sources have rejected the report.
The Housing Secretary has written to every English council leader and social housing provider, warning that deaths like that of Awar Bashak must never happen again. The 2-year-old died as a result of prolonged exposure to mould. The Chief Executive of Rochdale Borough-wide Housing, Gareth Swarbrick, was sacked yesterday. Michael Gove said the country must raise the bar dramatically on the quality of housing and ensure tenants' voices are heard.
Elon Musk has reinstated Donald Trump's Twitter account. The decision comes after 51.8% of Twitter users voted yes in an online poll, which received more than 15 million votes. The former president was suspended from the social media platform in January 2021 after a pro-Trump group attacked the US Capitol.
And members of Animal Rebellion occupied Gordon Ramsay's 3-star Michelin restaurant last night. The climate activists held mock menus outlining the environmental costs of items served at restaurant Gordon Ramsay in Chelsea. The group issued a statement saying they are campaigning for a plant-based food system.
Well, during his first visit to Ukraine since becoming Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak yesterday promised President Volodymyr Zelensky a £50 million air defence package.
The pledge comes as senior government officials claim massive support for European security from the UK will help lead to a frictionless Swiss-style trade deal.
Well, our political reporter Olivia Utley is here with us. Olivia, can I just start before we talk about that visit? It was very interesting in the headlines there. We were saying, we've been discussing in our papers this morning the fact that it's the front page of the Times, which is suggesting that the Chancellor and Sunak are considering a Swiss-style arrangement with the European Union to get more trade. And yet there we heard in the headlines that Number 10 have rejected this report. Where are we with this? Is it going to happen? Is it just the Times flying a kite?
Well, it sounds as though some sources at least have briefed it to the Times, but it's clear that the Prime Minister isn't happy about it. And unsurprisingly, of course, Boris Johnson and his chief negotiator, Lord Frost, ruled out a Swiss-style relationship with the EU years ago. And Rishi Sunak will know that his Conservative backbenchers, and in fact plenty of Conservative ministers, know that that would be a total anathema to Conservative voters, who many of whom lent their votes to Boris Johnson in 2019 because they wanted a proper Brexit to be done. So it seems as though this is something which maybe some perhaps more junior people in Number 10 are very interested in and would like the Times to think is going to happen. But Rishi Sunak is obviously very keen to pour cold water on it pretty quickly.
Is it the Times making mischief a bit there, do you think?
Possibly, but definitely there'll be.
It's gone down very, very badly, it has to be said, amongst big-name Brexiteers. Lord Frost, the Brexit negotiator himself, said if this is true, they need to seriously rethink it. Nigel Farage came out last night saying if this is true, the Tories deserve to be obliterated for betraying Brexit. Huge passions going out there. We're running a poll all morning, getting GBNews viewers to vote on if they would vote again as they did to stay. And yet 81.5% currently would vote for Brexit. So certainly in GB News land, still very happy about their choice. And they're really, really angry about what seems to be a dramatic U-turn in position here.
Yeah, and it really would be a dramatic U-turn in position because a Swiss-style relationship would involve payments to the EU budget, more liberal rules on EU migration, basically freedom of movement again, and it would involve probably the European Court of Justice having a say over what happens in Northern Ireland and possibly in the rest of Britain too. So it would be, it seems funny to even talk about it now, it seems like so long ago, but when we were all talking about Brexit in name only, there's a real danger that that's what we would end up having if this report does end up being true. I have to say, I do find it quite hard to believe because the idea is that this is being mooted. This is what the Times report says. The idea is being mooted because it would, in exchange, the EU would make big concessions over the Northern Ireland Protocol and would end the checks on trade that are coming through from the UK to Northern Ireland. That would imply that the whole plan has been sort of cooked up by the Northern Ireland office. And in the Northern Ireland office, you've got Chris Heaton-Harris and Steve Baker, who are both pretty hardline Brexiteers, which makes me a little bit sceptical.
Well, you are sceptical. Let us talk to former Conservative advisor Claire Purcell, who makes to find out what she makes of, first of all, Rishi's pledge to give £50 million, which doesn't sound much to help fight a war. Is it going to be enough to help the Ukraine? But first of all, let me get your take on this story in the Times today. Do you believe it or not?
Like Olivia, I would find this pretty hard to believe, to be honest. And I think we're harping back to these sort of politics of the 1980s, where the government would quite often float out a policy in the media to see what reaction it got. And then if it wasn't very favourable, they would say, oh, well, it wasn't our policy anyway, this is just being made up. So it does have that little bit of, let's see how this goes, let's see what people think of it, and then retract it very, very quickly. I would suggest it would be the worst thing the government could ever suggest. It isn't Brexit. It is not what people voted for. And the majority of cabinet ministers and backbenchers would have a real problem with it. And that's to say, without taking into account what the country would say. They wanted Brexit. They don't want to slide back into free movement, European Court of Justice, and paying into the EU budget. That was the whole reason behind Brexit in the first place. So I think this is a little bit of mischief. I think it's trying out the waters, and I don't think it'll happen.
Is this the blob, the civil service kind of floating ideas without ministerial consent? Or is this, as some suspect, people like Rishi and Jeremy Hunt would actually like a closer relationship with the European Union, and they're putting the ideas forward? Where does this nonsense come from?
Well, Rishi has just said no, hasn't he?
Yeah, do you believe that?
Well, why? You are a terrible cynic.
I'm suspicious about all of it, because this is what Brexiteers said would happen. We were called nutters and conspiracy theorists. It's happening. It's happening within the first week of his premiership. Come on, Claire.
I think it's probably a little bit of both. I think there are some civil servants that are putting the policy together as a sort of war cabinet to say, what if this happened? What if we did this? But I also think that there is probably some government hands in it too. I'm not necessarily sure it goes as far as a conspiracy theory. I would hate to think that as somebody who voted for Brexit myself. I wouldn't want that to happen. But I do think that this is just testing the waters on all sides. And it's happened before. If you look back to when Margaret Thatcher was around, policies would quite often appear in the media and then just be dismissed immediately because they didn't go favourably. So it's one of these things in politics that you're just trying it out, see how it lands, see if there's any movement through it. But I think with this one, it is just absolutely dead in the water.
About Richie's trip to Ukraine at the moment, what do you make of that? What do you think that he, or indeed Ukraine, is going to get out of it? And should we be saying you can have another £50 million? We don't know whether it's going to be in cash or in kind, do we?
We don't. This is a £50 million defence capability aid package, which includes 125 anti-aircraft guns and technology and anti-drone technology and all manner of kit like that. Now, it sounds an awful lot of money, and it is, but is it enough to protect Ukraine from Putin's forces? Well, that remains to be seen. But it isn't just the UK that is giving aid. So if you add that to everybody else, it is quite a lot. And it is right that we step in and we help Ukraine. But there does have to be some kind of recognition that the UK is pouring an awful lot in these defence missiles and bits of kit that we're sending over. What's happening to our own stockpile? So I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it, but I think that we all have to be a little bit mindful of how much more can we do. Everybody needs to play their part. This war does need to be concluded, and Ukraine needs to be free. But I just wonder at what cost. It doesn't seem to be ending at the moment, and it's a lot of money being poured in. It is also £12 million going into the World Food Programme. There is $4 million going into the International Organisation for Migration. So the United Kingdom really is stepping up and playing its part, as are other countries. But I do wonder where the pinch point comes as to how much we've got left to do.
Thanks very much indeed for that. And as you say, it's managing the budget, isn't it, overseas as well as it is here at home. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
It actually feels to me like if you're really unpopular at home, go to the Ukraine, give them a bit of money. I mean, do you think there's something in that? I mean, if you're having bad ratings at home, let's be strong on the foreign stage.
I think there definitely is something in that. I think there's also something political domestically going on here, which is that Ben Wallace, who's the Defence Secretary, is incredibly popular among Conservative Party members and with voters in general, actually, and with the Conservative Parliamentary Party. There were so many people saying that he should be the one to run to be Prime Minister. He chose not to do that, but instead made himself a kingmaker. And he, you will remember, said before Rishi Sunak formed his cabinet that he would only stay on in government if the government committed to 3% of GDP spent on defence. So doing something like this, going to Ukraine, showing solidarity and offering this big air package defence deal will keep... I mean, this sounds very cynical. Of course, there are other very good reasons for it, which Rishi Sunak knows. But domestically, it is quite useful as well, because it'll keep Ben Wallace very happy. And Rishi Sunak, you can't underestimate the amount he needs to keep Ben Wallace happy, to keep that government functioning properly.
Thank you very much, Olivia. Superb. See you soon.
Olivia. More to come, including the very latest on the energy price cap plans that were unveiled by the Chancellor.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
On radio and online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Well, welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Angela Rippon and myself, Martin Daubney.
Now, Jeremy Hunt says that from April 2023, the energy price guarantee is going to continue, excuse me, for a further 12 months at a higher level of £3,000 per year for the average household.
Well, prices forecast to remain elevated throughout the next year. However, there will be additional support for the most vulnerable.
Well, we're joined now by the CEO of the Energy and Utilities Alliance, Mike Foster. Mike, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. I wonder if you'd begin by just clearing up exactly what the energy price gap is. What does it mean?
Good morning to you both. The price cap, this is where viewers have to be really careful. The price cap isn't a limit on the total amount of people that people will pay for their energy for the year. What it does is set the rate per unit of energy so that the average user of energy will be paying from April £3,000 maximum. But that's if they are the average user. If you use more energy, your bills will be more than £3,000. And if you use less energy, it will be lower. So the price cap actually is a bit misleading. in that all it does is set the unit rates that you will be charged for every unit of gas and electricity that you use. It is not a cap on your total bill for the year.
If you want to reduce your bill, then the answer is that you're going to have to use less energy. It comes back to you.
Absolutely. It comes back to using less energy. Now, there's an argument about whether it's down entirely to the consumer or whether clearly vulnerable people from who have got less money around, whether they should be looking to government and others to help them. And there's a good argument that it's in government's interest as anybody else's to reduce the amount of energy that we use. But fundamentally, yes, that's true. The less energy you use, the better off you will be financially. And we have seen that, luckily, in October. We've been blessed with relatively warm weather. And so I think energy bills are down about 30% in October. But I don't know what it's like where you are this morning, but it's a bit nippy this morning around here. And so people's gas boilers will be turning on this morning and starting to use energy probably for the first time for the year.
So, Mike, a key point this week, Jeremy Hunt's budget announcement, there's been a change in the allowance the government was going to help. It was originally going to be 2 years, and it's been pulled back to 1 year. So is it from April people will be bearing the full brunt of energy costs? Now, 78% of people supported this price cap being extended. This is going to mean some painful stuff for every average British household, isn't it?
That's right. The price cap has had a roller coaster ride. Liz Truss came in and announced a price cap for 2 years. When Jeremy Hunt took over as Chancellor, while Liz Truss was still a Prime Minister, that was reduced to a 6-month price cap ending in April, with the promise of a big Treasury review. And obviously what they've concluded is, actually, let's just protect everybody. Let's not go through the difficulty of trying to target support. Let's protect everybody. But what they have done is put the price cap up by £500. So it's not as generous a scheme. It will last for the full 12 months from April. So we'll be protected until April 2024 from whatever the market price of energy is. And that's got to be some relief to us all. But going up by £500, people at the moment just do not have that spare cash available.
That is coming from the government, I know you feel very strongly, is not targeted in the right areas, that they're spending it on things that they do not need to spend it on, rather than focusing on those areas that really would help people.
Yeah, there is an argument that the government could have done more. They could have reduced the subsidy that's going to some people getting renewable heat pumps for their homes. So people are getting a subsidy of about £5,000 a time. They have to match it with another £8,000 on average. So these people have got money available, and 30,000 people are getting that support each year. Well, government could use that £150 million and give support to 300,000 people to put energy efficiency into their home, which we believe is a better way of using money when times are scarce. And so, yes, better targeting of support for us would be a more sensible approach. But government just seem to be hell bent on pushing the idea of heat pumps into people's homes, regardless of whether the home is suitable or not. We believe heat pumps have a role, but alongside important technologies like hydrogen for heating.
Yeah.
OK, and what about the energy beneath our feet? There's lots of controversy around things like shale and even coal. Surely an answer is to unlock our own energy rather than relying on imports from abroad.
The key is to reduce our use of fossil fuels entirely, because of not only the carbon constraint and trying to achieve net zero, but also, yes, it weans us off imports too. So our vision is for a hydrogen economy, where rather than having natural gas powering up your gas boiler, you'll have your boiler changed over a long period of time, so there's no extra cost to the consumer, but your boiler will be ready to take hydrogen, and then the hydrogen will be produced typically from offshore wind, the surplus offshore wind that will be generated, produce the hydrogen, it's free of carbon, goes through your pipes as natural gas does now, into your home, and when your gas boiler turns on a cold Sunday morning, it does so emitting no carbon dioxide. And that, for us, is the great prize.
I wonder whether or not you can convince the government that that's what they should be doing. We hope that you do, if it's actually going to bring our energy costs down. Mike, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Well, more to come, including the papers with Claire Muldoon and Fraser Myers.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
Stop talking. My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for The Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Welcome back. Well, we've got a lively lot here. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Angela Rippon and Martin Daubney.
And it's time for us to get inside the papers now with our lively duo. Their broadcaster, Claire Muldoon, and joining her is the Deputy Editor of Spiked, Fraser Myers.
So, Fraser, I want to kick off with a story that's really got me going.
No pun intended there, Mark. Come on.
This is the front page of The Express. An outrageous hour-long rant by FIFA boss Gianni Infantino sparked outrage.
I mean,
every aspect of this rant is kind of brilliant and cringeworthy in equal measure. It's the funniest thing. You know, we're all thinking, what's the Qatar World Cup going to be like? What a shambles it's going to be. And this has kicked it off in spectacular fashion. So not only has Gianni Infantini went on this strange rant about how he feels like Qatar, he feels persecuted.
He's a
unfairly persecuted because he once had, because when he was a child, he grew up with red hair and freckles, so he knows what it's like to be bullied. So he gave this kind of almost sort of Meghan Markle-esque speech about, I am a migrant worker, I am Arab, I am black, I am disabled.
I'm Spartacus.
I am Spartacus. So there's that aspect to it, which was just shameful and ridiculous. But also he's tried to defend Qatar's human rights record on the basis that, well, the West was evil too once. You know, he said that we had 3,000 years of human rights abuses and we in the West should apologise for the next 3,000 years.
But what about the Egyptians and, you know, what they did when they built the pyramids and the the man doesn't know his history.
We would like to think we've actually evolved. Did you not?
This is the bizarre thing. You know, it's one thing to say that you know, don't criticise Qatar, kick politics out of football. You know, it'd be a bit shameless, but it'd be less shameless than this. You know, him saying that actually the West is worse than Qatar and has more to apologise for. It's just
there wasn't a booze ban. I think it'd been on the sherry because it was a really outrageous and ridiculous rant. And if you're going to talk about reparations, Gianni, and what about the Romans paying something to England?
Yes.
Sorry, but what did the Romans do for us?
Well, it was all bad.
Well, they gave us plumbing.
Tell you what, why don't we ask John Cleese when he's got his show on GB News in the new year?
But it's just incredible, isn't it? That I think people just want the tournament to start now. That we actually get some football going with it instead of all this nonsense about politics.
You wonder whether the politics will sort of, you know, disappear as soon as the games get going. Often that is what happens. But the other thing that I suppose is extraordinary about Infantino's rant is it just goes to show that you can use kind of woke language to defend literally anything.
It was a very lame attempt to justify what's going on.
Exactly. It was that classic sort of decolonised kind of rhetoric. Very funny.
Claire, I think we're going to hang the flags out, aren't we, and say yes, a result.
Meaning what, Angela?
Well, we had this discussion, the story that's on the front page of The Sun, Mould housing boss is sacked.
Well,
we were talking about this yesterday, in fact, and I know you feel very strongly about it.
I do. The housing, we're talking about obviously the Rochdale scandal, not the grooming gangs this time in Rochdale, something, you know, equally as bad. There's a death of this gorgeous young lad, only 2, died from breathing difficulties because his home fell short of any standard.
He had spores in his lungs.
Any standard. And this is a disgusting indictment of our housing crisis per se in this country, but something specific to Rochdale. And thank goodness the housing boss was sacked. I couldn't believe it on Friday when the committee stood by him. Stood by him. This is a man on £185,000 a year, which is a lot of money, more than the PM's being paid, more than 98% of the country is being paid, because he's in the top 2%. This is on his watch. This happened on his watch. The family told the council, told the local authority it was not fit for purpose in 2017.
Yes.
They did nothing. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of people in this country that are living in substandard accommodation, and to think that shelter is a fundamental human right to have shelter, and yet it's at a cost, and it's at a human cost. This isn't Victorian Britain. This isn't Dickensian times. We are supposed to be a civilised, democratic, forward-thinking country because, let's be honest, we've got so much diversity and inclusion going on. It's trained in the NHS, it's trained in lots of the big companies, and yet people are dying in homes in this country.
And it's not as if we don't know. We haven't got engineers, we haven't got building experts who know that mould and damp in the homes is really, really bad.
You've got landlords that don't address it either. This is the private sector. This is the public sector.
But you've got the arrogance of being. They were told paint over it.
Yes. And then there's other people. No, but it's worse than that. There's people in this country on Twitter that are saying, well, the parents should have taken more of a healthcare view. They should be bleaching it. There is nothing that can do to help this.
No, that's a basic lack of understanding about what mould is and how it works.
Yes, and we had Grenfell happen as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the local authorities have got blood on their hands. Now, I've used that term a lot when I'm doing paper reviews, but in this case, it's so justified.
I think the Grenfell comparison is really important because, you know, in both cases, what you have is a, you know, local community or ordinary people raising the alarm to the authorities.
Yes.
You know, the people of Grenfell knew that there were serious fire risks in their building. They set up groups to try and, you know, petition around it. And in this case, you said, you know, this family were warning about the mould since 2017. They were just not listened to. Working class people are just totally ignored, written off, their concerns don't matter, and then the result is tragedy.
Yes.
OK, so moving on now to the story about the Twitter poll that's reinstated Trump. Before we do that, I'd just like to remind GB News viewers we're offering our own Twitter poll all morning about would you vote again for Brexit, given the chance, because front page of the Sunday Times today is a reintegration into the EU, a softer Swiss-style approach. So far, GB News viewers are very, very clear. 82% of you are saying that you would vote Brexit again. Good on you. Let's move on to this. Sorry.
We have to say that we do have to say that Number 10 have denied the story and said it is not true.
Well, they would do, wouldn't they? Let's move on.
Now they know how people feel about it.
We have to say that.
Let's move on to another Twitter poll. 18 million people voted, Fraser, on this Twitter poll to reinstate Donald Trump, one of Elon Musk's first actions as a free speech advocate. Trump's back. What's the story?
Well, Elon Musk promised to turn Twitter into a free speech platform, and this is the first sign of that. Because although, you know, he's been in charge for a few weeks now, there haven't actually been any big changes to the algorithm and things like that. Although people claim, quite erroneously, that there's more harassment or whatever than there used to be. And he always promised that he was thinking about bringing back Trump. And it is worth taking a step back. You know how mad it was that Trump at the time was the sitting president of the United States, at the time the elected president of the United States, and he was banned from social media based on the decisions taken in the boardrooms of Silicon Valley tech firms. Now, that is an extraordinary sort of thumb on the scales of democracy. Whatever you think about Trump and his various rants, and they were, you know, around that time, getting increasingly crazy, getting, you know, bordering on sort of election denial. But surely it has to be up to the people to decide whether they want to listen to that, whether they agree with him.
And also there was a huge conversation about the type of people who were banned, because the Taliban still had a Twitter account, didn't they?
Yeah,
the Taliban were OK, but
Taliban's still on Twitter. I think the Ayatollah of Iran is still very much on Twitter.
Oh, they obviously went alphabetically.
Coughing fit there, and
TA was fine, but by the time they got down to TR, that was it. just over and out.
But it was outrageous. But there have been a lot of hissy fits about this. Been a lot of pearls being clutched. What's your take, Claire? I mean,
Trump back? I mean,
Trump,
as long as he doesn't get back into the White House, I think that's fine. Just have him on Twitter, just let him go. People have got a choice. You know, they've got they can follow him or not. They can block him. They can silence him on Twitter. I mean, people are so reactionary these days, and they're so like clutching. Oh my gosh, Trump's back. Who cares? What difference does it make?
Well, I think Liberals care a lot about this, because we are coming up to the, you know, him being put forward as a presidential... Well, he's put himself forward. He is going to run, and he will rely a lot on Twitter to get his message out. I think this is
I think the Republicans will rely more on him as a PR machine. But
look how
clearly,
that failed.
yes, exactly. And then people that don't have, you know, they do have short memories. Will they forget, or won't they forget the storming of the White House when Trump left? All the FBI files in Mar-a-Lago that were taken. I mean, the man is nuts. I mean, he's not functioning.
But it's interesting to see he hasn't actually tweeted anything yet.
Yeah.
So nothing has gone out. He's famously on Truth Social, like his own platform that he backs. Will he snub it? Will he say, no, I don't want to come back? Or is it just too much for him to resist?
He's suggesting that he will snub it, but, I mean, it's such a huge method of communication that he would be foolish not to get back on it. And it's, you know, talking about his kind of, you know, return to the presidential run. I mean, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that he was a kind of drag on Republicans in the midterms. So I would suspect he won't be as successful as he was in 2016 when he won the presidency. But maybe it would be good to have him on Twitter because he's the best tweeter of all time, even if he wasn't a very good president.
Well, he gives you all a good laugh, doesn't he?
He is one of the funniest people on the planet.
Super. Well, Fraser and Claire, thank you very much.
You're
we'll see you again in
welcome.
the next hour. Cheers.
Thanks. Now, UK retail sales rebounded and grew last month, apparently, according to data from the Office for National Statistics. Sales volumes actually increased by a huge figure of 0.6%.
But with many of us cutting down on Christmas this year, what does that mean for the world of retail?
Well, here to tell us more about this is John Redman. He's a retail expert and a founder of Bosco. Thank you for joining us, John. Thank you. Now, there is a sort of... Yeah, there's an irony here, isn't there? That on the one hand, we've got people saying, oh, you know, this year, because everybody is feeling the pinch financially, we've just got to cut down on what we spend on Christmas, on food and on presents. Well, that is going to have a terrible effect, isn't it, on the retail trade?
No, it's definitely going to have an effect, but I think Christmas isn't cancelled, and I think retailers need to try and work out where the demand is and ultimately try and price their products at the right level to keep that demand. And Black Friday is going to be interesting. So, but I think it's tough. Retail's tough. People have got less money in their pockets, and I don't think the recent budget particularly helped anybody with any extra cash before Christmas. So, yeah, it's going to be tricky, I think, both for high street and for online. And it's going to be tough times. I think the interesting thing might be around, are people going to spread the cost of Christmas with those sort of buy now, pay later options? And are we going to get ourselves into a sort of credit challenge? But yeah, the demand is there. It's really how do retailers find that demand and where should they be advertising?
So there's been lots of talk over the years about how the high street can be helped as opposed to online. Things like cutting business rates to give a helping hand. Is that sort of thing you'd support?
Yeah, absolutely. If we can make it easier for people to keep their stores open, and business rates have been told they're going to be frozen still, I think that comes in next year, so it's not particularly going to help ahead of Christmas. But absolutely, I think that's good. And it's going to be interesting to see, because we were told by the Prime Minister last week we are in a recession. And I think the last time we had a recession, we didn't really have proper e-commerce. So all the different generations weren't necessarily comfortable buying things online. And I think one of the only things that's changed behaviour in a positive after COVID is people are now buying things online. So it'd be interesting to see if people don't necessarily go out onto the high street and spend the money on parking, travel, a meal out, and actually just buy their presents online. So that's going to be interesting to see. But the demand is still there, and I think it's just reduced, but it's trying to find your pocket of where you can actually find your customers.
So many shops now on the high streets that are boarded up, that are empty, that are turning into charity shops. What is this all telling us about the future of the retail industry in this country?
Well, it's difficult, isn't it, Angela? I think, especially with Jules, one of our favourite brand of our family, they went to the wall this week. And I think really there's the product and the pricing and the competition. And fundamentally, I think everybody is focusing on the discount end of the market and price competition. And you could argue that the way that businesses have financed themselves has caused a lot of that. So a lot of companies have sold and then VC backed, they then have a huge amount of debt to finance. And then the cost of, I think, of producing all the goods and the logistics of the goods, plus rent and rates, it's just becoming really, really economically hard to keep your shops open. But it's not just the shops. If you look, Made.com was an online-only business, and they went bust only a few weeks ago. So I think people in retail have got to really ensure they're running their businesses by putting their customers first and ultimately, hopefully, buying the right product at the right time so that they can get those sales. But Christmas certainly isn't cancelled, and I know 0.6% increase in sales isn't huge, but I think there is opportunity out there. But I think it's going to be difficult. And I think January, this is the golden quarter for retail. It's where most people make all their profit. So I think January is going to be interesting to see what happens.
So, John, we also saw that Amazon laid off 10,000 staff. Is that a downsizing since the height of the pandemic, or is that actually another chilling factor that people are spending less online as well?
A lot of the tech companies have been doing this, and I think they just over-recruited, is my view. And I think the scary thing about these big behemoths like the Amazons is if the smaller retailers pull back their advertising over the recession or this period, are they going to lose customers to the big guys and then never get them back? Right. So that's one of the sort of my worries would be. But I don't know the details of which areas of Amazon, because I know Amazon's retail is actually is loss-making, and they make their money by selling tech, which I suppose isn't fair to the rest of the retail world, because the rest of the retail world can't really compete.
Thanks very much indeed for that rather grim report.
Yeah. OK, well, there's more to come, including the countdown to Qatar as the World Cup kicks off today.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK will be wet and cloudy in the east with rain clearing, sunshine and showers in the west. Here are the details. Across southwest England, after a dry start to the day, blustery showers will spread eastwards. These could be heavy at times, with a risk of a thunderstorm for western coasts. Cloud and rain will linger across southeast England at first, though once this clears, it will be a dry morning with some sunny spells. There'll be a mixture of sunshine and scattered blustery showers across South Wales this morning. These showers could be heavy and thundery. After early rain and cloud clears, it will be a dry and fine start across the Midlands with sunny spells. Scattered showers that could be heavy at times will affect the west later. Cloud and rain will clear northeast England through the first part of the morning. This will leave a dry period with some sunny spells ahead of showers moving in from the west later. A band of rain will clear southern Scotland early this morning. This will be followed by a mixture of sunshine and scattered showers, and some of these could be heavy. There'll be a mixture of sunshine and scattered blustery showers across Northern Ireland this morning. Some of these showers could be heavy, with hail and thunder at times. So showers will continue to spread eastwards throughout this afternoon before easing into the evening with clear spells developing. That's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales, and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio,
and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
The World Cup kicks off in Qatar today.
Good morning. It's 8 o'clock on Sunday, the 20th of November, and this is Breakfast on GB News with me, Angela Rippon, and my colleague, Martin Daubney.
We are live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. Here's what's making the news this morning.
There's just hours to go until the much-anticipated Football World Cup, the first to take place in winter and the first to be hosted by a Muslim country. We'll be bringing you everything you need to know.
And Rishi Sunak has met with Ukraine's President Zelensky in Kyiv, promising them £50 million in defence aid. It's his first visit to the country since becoming Prime Minister.
Meanwhile, the government are planning a Swiss-style relationship with the European Union in an attempt to boost trade relations.
All morning, we've been asking you if you vote differently for Brexit now, if you're given the chance. Again, have your say on our Twitter poll at GB News, and so far, it's 82% in favour of Brexit.
We have to say that Number 10 have actually denied that story, which appears on the front page of the Times today.
If you believe them, which I'm afraid I don't. Anyway, it's been 30 years since the Windsor Castle fire, which destroyed 115 rooms, including 9 state rooms back in 1992. Our reporter will be live from the Queen's former residence.
Well, as ever, of course, you can join in any of our discussions by just emailing us. The address is nice and simple. It's gbviews@gbnews.com. Well, our top story today is after over a decade of controversy, the 2022 FIFA World Cup starts today in Qatar as the host face in Doha.
And human rights groups have criticised its treatment of foreign workers as well as its stance on same-sex relationships.
Well, England are going to kick off their World Cup tomorrow versus Iran, which is set to be marred by their ongoing unrest at home.
And we're now joined by Nina David, a crisis and tactical Iran campaigner from Amnesty International UK, and our sports broadcaster in the studio here, Aidan McGee. First, Nina, so we're looking ahead to the game with England and Iran, opening game for both of them, surrounded by the political situation, the uprising, the protests in Iran. What's the situation? Because as I understand it, this game has taken on a special significance because the public aren't behind the team because they support the regime. Is that right?
I think it's fair to say the popular opinion regarding Team Melli has shifted for this particular World Cup. There is discontent with the team as a whole, and it's fair to say they're not seen as an ambassador for Iran per se, and potentially as a vehicle for representing the government. So it's kind of a general view that perhaps people in Iran might boycott watching the World Cup for this reason.
Our reporter, Paul Hawkins, is actually in Doha, and we're going to go to him in just a moment. But one of the things that I'd like to know from you is whether or not you think that any members of the team from Iran are going to be brave enough to come out and make any kind of sign that they support what is going on in your country at the moment. For instance, I think there was a question, talking to Aidan, our sports correspondent earlier, saying that there was a question whether or not they would do something like this, indicating that they were snipping their hair, which is, of course, what the girls and the women have been doing in Iran at the moment. Do you think they'll be brave enough to do that?
I hope so. So Omid Djalali has termed it the scrunch and snip. So, of course, actually the Iran beach soccer players mimic that gesture in a mark of solidarity. We've also seen other Iranian athletes in the last few weeks doing similar marks of solidarity. The Iranian water polo team not singing their national anthem, and, of course, climber Elnaz Rekabi's no headscarf climbing protest. So I very much hope that the players will do something. And if the players are not able to, because it's fair to say that professional athletes are no exception to the regime's brutality against their own people, our hope is that opposition players, so the England players, may do something in solidarity with women and girls in Iran.
Yeah, well, indeed. I mean, the whole World Cup at the moment is a wonderful platform for shining a light on what is actually happening in Iran at the moment in a way that perhaps it would not have got that kind of publicity before. Do stay with us, Nina, because I think we'll want to come back to you in just a moment. But in the meantime, let's chat to our reporter, Paul Hawkins, who is on the Doha Corniche in Qatar to tell us more. Hi there again, Paul. Now, just tell us now what is going to happen today. Have you been speaking to any of the British fans that are there supporting England and Wales?
Yeah, morning, Angela. Morning, Martin. Yeah, in fact, in the past half an hour, I've been speaking to 3 or 4 Welsh fans, and I'm just asking them how they're feeling about being here. And, of course, for Wales, it's a big deal. They haven't been to a World Cup since 1958, and they're kind of soaking it up, the atmosphere, taking it all in. I did ask them about their accommodation. There are reports about inadequate fan accommodation, especially in the fan parks, and that is where they're staying. They said to me, well, to be honest, it's a little bit like staying in a caravan at the moment, and it's fine. They said the shower's fine. They've got an air conditioning in their room. They said, look, it's very expensive in this country, and unless you're going to pay top dollar, then you're kind of going to get a little bit what you pay for. So yeah, it's not ideal, but it does the job. And from the Welsh fans' point of view, because they're not used to being at these kind of tournaments, they're just happy to get whatever they can. So they are here. They said they'd spoken to other members of the media, by the way, who said that when they told them that they were fine with the accommodation and it wasn't that bad, they kind of got that they found that the journalists were kind of looking for that angle on the story. So while there are problems with the accommodation, while there are some things that are still, the preparations are still underway, even on the first day of the World Cup, yeah, it's not ideal, but that's just the way it is in this part of the world.
So, Paul, looking at that, it looks a bit like Butlins without the booze. And if you think about it, that's a bit of a lose-lose. But what I want to get from you is a feeling of how many fans are on the ground, because by now you'd expect there to be thousands and thousands of England fans roaming the streets with their shirts off, with the flags. What's the actual situation there? It looks pretty quiet.
Yeah, it is quite in this immediate bit. I mean, we're on the Corniche at the moment, which is kind of like, I mean, if you have a look over here, this is how it looks in this part of Doha. This is kind of like the waterfront, if you will. So we've got over here a big FIFA World Cup sign, and over in the distance there, you can see just behind where that tall building is, there's that over there towards there, that's the Souk Waqif, and that's like a kind of like a market area. And then if we pan all the way back round, we can see the kind of the famous business part of Doha as well, and then the Corniche kind of comes around in a crescent moon towards us, and so that's kind of where we are at the moment. There are England fans here. There aren't as many as there are at previous World Cups because, of course, you have the price, you have concerns over the fact that they can't drink, about the culture here. I have to say it's very warm and welcoming, the hospitality that we've experienced so far, and there is a significant number of Welsh fans as well, so it's not going to be like previous World Cups, but there are thousands of fans here from all across the world, and they're determined to have a good time.
Paul, look behind you!
Behind you!
Behind you!
Behind you! Behind you!
Behind you!
There you go, in fact. Just as I said that, they hove into view. There you go.
The boys are on town.
I'm going to guess they're from Rotherham. Honestly, that wasn't staged. I didn't know they were going to be there. But, yeah, so there they are, just on cue. And I think they're from Rotherham. Maybe we'll try and have a word with them in just a moment. Yeah, and there you go.
And Derby County.
So clearly they're from the Midlands. Yeah,
well,
I mean, we don't know. That's the thing. There are a significant. If I could just add, a significant number of the expat community out here. Remember, 80% of the people in Qatar are expats. A significant number of them are British, so they may not actually be travelling over here. They may live here.
Yeah, OK, well, thank you very much for that. We'll come back to you the next hour. I'd like to see some Nottingham Forest fans there. I won't hold it against the Derby County fans. Let's cut back to the studio, Aidan. So, at last, we're seeing, signs of life. Signs of England fans turning up, which actually lifted my spirits. But you've got some amazing numbers for us about a lot of people talking about what this tournament has cost. And Aidan, you've got some eye-watering numbers here for us.
Yeah, I mean, look, if we could just broaden it out slightly, I'll just look at the obstinacy of Qatar in recent days. The issue about the beer bans at the stadiums, some of the other things that people fear might happen in terms of their treatment of members of the LGBTQ plus community at the tournament. I just wonder whether it's a dawn of realisation for Qatar that they've bent over backwards to have this tournament. They've paid eye-watering sums of money, which we'll come to in a moment. And maybe they're just considering that for the first time in a while, sports washing isn't really working. The reputation of Qatar as a result of this having this World Cup, especially in recent weeks, has absolutely plummeted. Yeah. It's lower than it's ever been. It's lower than even when it took the tournament back in 2010. And against that is how much they've spent to hold this tournament. Now, I was doing some research of my own. Now, let's consider the last 8 editions of the World Cup, going back to 1990. So just take the last 3, for example. South Africa spent £4.1 billion hosting it in 2010. They'd recently held a Rugby World Cup, so they had the infrastructure there already. It wasn't a huge cost. Brazil, big infrastructure issues there. They spent £16.6 billion. Russia spent £11.6 billion. And they're a country that loads of money into sport. They do their own version of sport washing, don't they? Qatar, £185 billion. It's an astonishing.
Eye-watering.
So that's comfortably more. That's probably double every other World Cup put together going back to 1930.
Crikey.
It's an eye-watering amount of money.
That's because they had nothing there. They had
one stadium. They had one stadium. They've had to build 8 stadiums in the middle in an area the size of Yorkshire. The population of the whole state is only just shy of 3 million. Now, what they do with it afterwards, does it become a white elephant like every other or most other Olympic organisation or infrastructures or World Cup stadiums around the world?
Or as you said yesterday, is this a way for David Beckham?
David Beckham to come in and actually start his own football.
Possibly,
I don't know what.
Possibly.
In that part of the world?
It's not inconceivable that having got into Miami. Up and running in the States, they could launch another team in a different country. It does happen. I mean, there are English clubs who have versions of their clubs in other countries. They usually almost for player development a lot of the time. So there's opportunities there as well. I think Qatar will probably go big into trying hosting or building their own league in future. Prior to this, it's just been a poor standard, punctuated by the odd big name from Europe coming over there to try and boost it. It doesn't really work unless you've got a groundswell of interest going in from the bottom. Maybe they think the World Cup is a chance to do that.
The other thing is, of course, they've got so much money in Qatar that they could just actually demolish the whole lot and build something else.
Well, they could easily. I mean, that's not uncommon in the States. I mean, you saw a lot of the stadiums going back to the World Cup in 1994, including the Pontiac Silverdome, has been razed to the ground.
That's great. Thanks, Aidan. We'll see you in the next hour. Now, go back to Nina quickly. He's been very patiently waiting with us there in New York. Now, football World Cups in particular are about miracles. Can there be a miracle? Can Iran do well? And do you hope they beat England tomorrow?
I think that's very unlikely.
Well, I don't know.
However, like I said, I do hope there will be a political gesture and a gesture of solidarity for women and girls in Iran and women life freedom in Iran. I hope we see that from the Iran players and indeed from the England players as well.
Nina, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you. Well, it's 13 minutes now past 8, and we're going to bring you up to date now with the rest of today's top stories.
After negotiations through the night, a deal has finally been agreed at COP27 to help poor countries deal with the impact of climate change. The so-called Loss and Damage Fund will help developing nations bear the cost of disasters such as drought and flooding. However, a decision on exactly which countries should pay has been left until COP28 next year.
Senior government officials are considering getting a Swiss-style trading relationship with Europe, according to the Sunday Times. Switzerland's trade agreement with the EU give them direct access to parts of the internal market. Now, it would take the UK 10 years to change the deal, and Downing Street sources have rejected the report.
And the Housing Secretary has written to every English council leader and social housing provider, warning that deaths like that of Awab Ishaq must never happen again. The 2-year-old died as a result of prolonged exposure to mould. The chief executive of Rochdale Borough-wide Housing, Gareth Swarbrick, was sacked yesterday. Michael Gove said the country must raise the bar dramatically on the quality of social housing and ensure tenants' voices are heard. And members of an Animal Rebellion occupied Gordon Ramsay's 3-star Michelin restaurant last night. The climate activists held mock menus outlining environmental costs of items served at restaurant Gordon Ramsay in Chelsea. The group issued a statement saying they are campaigning for a plant-based food system.
Well, as we mentioned in the headlines there, the UK could form a Swiss-style tie with Brussels. Now, that is according to the Sunday Times, but it has actually been it's been poo-pooed, hasn't it, by Downing Street?
Well, I don't trust Downing Street on this. We'll find out in a minute about that from Olivia. But the pledge comes as senior government officials claim massive support for European security from the UK will help lead to a frictionless trade deal. So, Olivia Utley, let's talk about this. It's really lit up social media. We've got a poll running on GB News. So far, 81.5% in favour of Brexit. There's been over 3,500 votes. Get involved if you want to do that. Clearly, it's gone down very badly with Brexiteers.
Yes, it has. So first up, let's just go through what the Swiss-style deal would entail. It would mean payments to the European budget, the EU budget.
That's amazing.
Freedom of movement, or something very similar to freedom of movement, with EU countries. And it would involve the European Courts of Justice having a say over what happens in Britain and Northern Ireland. So lots of Brexiteers feel that that would sort of be Brexit in name only. And of course, it's the very deal which Boris Johnson and his chief negotiator, Lord Frost, roundly rejected just 3 years ago. Whether it's true or not is the next question. It's possible that you've got civil servants, more junior civil servants in Downing Street sort of going rogue. They would like this to be the case, and so they're briefing newspapers. Or you've got slightly more senior politicians briefing this because they'd like it to be the case. Perhaps Rishi Sunak has shown an interest in it, and it's gone out to the papers. Now he is roundly denying it. Unsurprisingly, electorally, it would be suicide for the Prime Minister. Remember that in 2019, of course, there were the Blue Wall, the old Red Wall places, which lent their votes to the Conservatives because they wanted a proper Brexit and they thought that Boris Johnson could deliver it, as he did. So if the Conservatives row back on that now, that would seem like it would be electoral suicide. I have my doubts that it is true, or that the Prime Minister is serious about pursuing this, because the idea is that in exchange for that sort of closer relationship with Europe, the EU would back down on the Northern Ireland Protocol and drop the trading, drop the checks on goods going through Northern Ireland. And in the Northern Ireland office, you've got two very strong Brexiteers in Chris Heaton-Harris and Steve Baker. So it's sort of hard to believe that they would allow this to happen.
I'm wondering whether or not, particularly with your reaction to all of this, Martin, whether or not what we aren't seeing here is some sort of backbench anti-Sunak reaction, which is just causing a bit of mischief. And so let's find out from the political editor of The Express online, David Maddox, who joins us now to give us his take on this. Mischief-making, or should we take this seriously, do you think, David?
I think experience tells me we should take this seriously. The Conservatives often use the Sunday Times to fly a kite as such, and to test the reaction to these policies. It may well be that the reaction has been so severe that they've decided to, deny it straight away. But there are certainly people in the cabinet ministerial office who would actually quite like us to kind of move to this semi-rejoined position.
So, Dave, I've got a couple of questions for you. I'm assuming this has gone down terribly with Express readers. These are clear red lines, aren't they? Closer integration, open borders, paying money, overseeing our laws by ECJ. These are things that will drive Express readers nuts.
Well, one thing I would say is Express readers are amongst the most conservative and most loyal supporters of the Conservatives, as long as they're doing the right thing. If they're doing the wrong thing, Express readers have a habit of switching to the alternative. They were the ones who backed UKIP. As you know, Martin, they were the ones who backed you guys in the Brexit party. If I were Richard Tice, I'd be rubbing my hands at the moment for the Reform Party, because, I mean, they seem to be doing quite well anyway in the polls. I think they had 8% last week. And this after the weird budget last week, this may be the kind of final nail in the coffin for a lot of people, not just Express readers, just people on the centre-right of politics.
And I've got one more quick question for you, and that is somebody who's particularly angry about this is Nigel Farage, who's saying the Tories should be obliterated. Dave, as a close watcher of Nigel's movements, could things like this preempt a quicker return to frontline politics for him?
I would have thought it would, actually. He's been testing the waters quite a lot in recent weeks. I noticed he's been going on social media, asking people to rejoin the movement. And, he's obviously itching to get back. This would give him the perfect grounds for it. And the other thing I would say, though, is that people don't realise what a fragile position Rishi Sunak is in, after the Liz Truss debacle. And, this is a sort of thing that could instigate yet another internal coup from the Tories.
Dave, that's superb. Always a pleasure and never a chore. So let's quickly cut back to you, Olivia. You heard that there. Could this preempt the return of people like Nigel Farage to politics, or is this just a false dawn?
Well, I think that the point that David made about the Rishi Sunak's government being incredibly fragile is really worth repeating, because we've all sort of forgotten that 6 weeks ago, was it, Liz Truss was defenestrated in that very dramatic manner, and then reluctantly MPs threw their weight behind Rishi Sunak, but he lost the leadership election in the summer, and he had to prove his sort of credentials as a serious Conservative Prime Minister to get the sort of right of the party on side. And in the Telegraph this morning, there was briefing after briefing of Tory MPs saying that this is the politics of madness, one of them. We've returned to the dark days of Gordon Brown. They really don't seem happy at all. And if they're not happy, then you can guess that their constituents probably aren't very happy either, which suggests that perhaps we could see a sort of split in the Conservative Party. We could see mass defections from the Conservative Party, perhaps. I mean, somewhere down the line, don't want to be too dramatic. But if we were to have some sort of Swiss-style deal, that could happen. And that does suggest some sort of an opening, maybe, for a Nigel Farage party.
You did say that Rishi Sunak lost the ballot, but in fact he was the choice of the MPs when he was balloted within the House of Commons, wasn't he? By a mile, he was their choice.
That is true, but he was very unpopular with the Conservative Party members.
With the members, yes.
Olivia, that's superb. And quickly, let's get some GB views on this. You've been really lighting up the wires on this one. Cheryl, very outspoken. We voted for Brexit and for a government that supports Brexit. We should not be contemplating any form of return to the EU.
Yes, and we've got John saying, yes, I would change my vote on Brexit now. I was sold a lie. I thought we were getting back control of our borders and laws, and now we're being flooded by even more. But I tell you, there is one, because we were talking about the NHS when we were looking at the papers earlier, and Teresa says, at last someone is talking sense. I've said all along that the money poured into the NHS is wasted. There needs to be a reform.
And a very quick update on the GB News live poll. Word has obviously got around. There's been a dramatic change. It's now 68% for Brexit. A surge of the Remainers getting involved in this poll. We've had an extra 1,500 votes in the last 20 minutes. Obviously, this is doing the rounds on social media. There could be an upset.
You never know. More to come, not just on our survey, but including the anniversary of the Windsor Castle fire.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio,
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
News channel.
hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Angela Rippon and myself, Martin Daubney.
Now, it's been 30 years since a fire broke out at Windsor Castle and destroyed a fifth of that historic building, including 9 staterooms and both St George's Hall and Brunswick Tower.
The Queen was shocked by the devastation of her favourite's home, and the events surrounding the fire have recently been dramatised in the latest series of The Crown. Our reporter Alice Porter is outside the castle for us. So, Alice, just remind us about what happened on that fateful day.
Good morning. Well, the fire began in Queen Victoria's private chapel when a faulty spotlight ignited a curtain, and soon the fire spread to St George's Hall next door, and the fire really was alight and started blazing through the castle. And at about 11:30 the fire was spotted and fire services were called to the castle, and it was an extraordinary 225 firefighters came from the surrounding area, and it was an extraordinary task to bring the fire under control. It took about 9 hours and involved 1.5 billion gallons of water to bring it under control. Now, luckily, the Queen was not here at the time. She was at Buckingham Palace, but the real concern was about the precious artwork and artefacts which were here. Now, there were a number of firefighters here, but also Windsor being a garrison town, there was also members of the army who came as well, and they all came to help. And luckily, only 2 pieces of artwork were lost, but that's largely due to the firefighters who all formed a human chain to try and rescue this important artwork. Now, firefighters from 6 of the nearby counties came and supported them, and Paul Thomas was one of them, and he gives his recollections of what happened that day.
As we sort of turned out onto the M4, we could see the smoke from the fire engine, and as you go down the relief road to Windsor, you could see huge plumes of smoke coming over the top of the castle. And I can remember going into St George's Hall, I think it was. There were some huge paintings on the wall. We got some ladders, and we were up the ladders unscrewing the frames from the paintings and then taking the paintings off the walls, and it was getting smokier and smokier and smokier until we were told then to leave because it was getting too smoky and too dangerous.
And Alice, this came at what the Queen ultimately referred to as her annus horribilis, didn't it? It was not a good year for her.
Wasn't, and I think we've very much seen that. For those of you who have been watching The Crown, we've seen this very sort of tragic reconstruction of the events, really, and seeing the Queen standing in the castle, which was very much, and I think it's important to stress this was very much her home. This, you know, of course, there are a number of royal residences. This was very much a home. She was evacuated here during the war, so this was very much her home, whilst Buckingham Palace was the office. So, of course, to see your home go up in smoke in this way was incredibly devastating for her. But as you're saying, that was very much the culmination in very much her worst year, because 3 out of 4 of her children had announced their separation, including, of course, particularly significant Princess Diana and Prince Charles. There was all sorts of leaked, embarrassing tapes, which was all rather embarrassing for the royal family, and certainly did not do anything to help their cause in terms of the public eye. And then the situation, sadly, very much sort of got worse, because then the question was, well, who's going to pay for the £40 million that was needed to rebuild Windsor Castle? And it became very political. In the end, the Queen and the royal family did end up paying for it, largely out of the cost by opening up Buckingham Palace for the first time for tourists, and that's one of the ways in which they gained some revenue. But it took 5 years to reconstruct Windsor Castle, and it was in fact 5 years later, on exactly to the day in 1997, that the castle reopened, which was suitably timed for, in fact, the golden anniversary of the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh.
Well, we're joined in the studio now by Daily Mail columnist and the author of a wonderful book called Queen of Our Times. Quite a tome there, isn't it? It's The Life of Elizabeth II, and it's Robert Hardiman. Thank you for joining us, Robert.
Thanks.
And it is important, isn't it, to remember that actually Windsor Castle was important to Her Majesty. It was her sort of weekend getaway, wasn't it? She loved going there and loved living there.
She did. I mean, she would, as Rachel said, I mean, it was very much home. If Buckingham Palace was the office, this is really her place. And she and Prince Philip loved it. They took it on when it was still pretty much in a sort of wartime state, and they'd sort of transformed it inside and out. The Duke of Edinburgh was the ranger of the great part, a job that actually Prince Charles, now the King, has given himself this week. So their life was very much, you know, that was where they spent most of the time. I mean, yes, of course, the Queen would move around. So to hear the news on a Friday, and she was still up in London, that the castle was on fire, I mean, this was appalling. And so she drove straight down there. And she actually went inside the castle while it was on fire, because she was certain things she wanted to get out. She didn't know how far the fire was going to spread, and there were certain very precious things, and she insisted on going inside. And I've spoken to people who were there with her that day, and as a result, she got a certain degree of smoke inhalation herself. She already had a cold. And it must have been absolutely, you know, appalling for her. And yet, she remained very stoical. When she got back to Buckingham Palace a few hours later, all the staff, I mean, they were sort of came out to sort of just stand there and sort of show her some sort of solidarity. Didn't know what to say, and she tried to she looked on the sort of bright side. She said, well, at least we managed to save the pictures. Yeah. And they were very lucky, because because there was refurbishment work going on, a lot of the art had already been moved.
It wasn't there, yeah.
It wasn't there.
Yeah.
And the other stroke of luck was it wasn't raining, which meant when they were bringing all these priceless works of art out, they were literally just stacking them up in the quadrangle. Someone said it was like a giant open-air antiques market. And you had the army there, as Rachel mentioned. So, in a sense, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. And the net result, when after this extraordinary restoration project, which actually came in under budget, Prince Philip took charge of it and was very strict on that. The castle emerged all the better for it, actually. The kitchens were greatly improved. They discovered bits of the castle that had all been boarded up by the Victorians. They didn't know were there.
And it's also worth pointing out that today would have been the 75th wedding anniversary of the Queen and Prince Philip. So quite a day all round for looking back.
Yes, no, I mean, it was as the report mentioned. I mean, when it came back into life, that was, as the Queen said at the time, it was the greatest wedding anniversary present she could have asked for.
What do we think is going to happen to the castle now? Because, of course, as we say, it was her favourite home. There was a suggestion that William and Kate would move into it with their children, but of course they've already got a rather substantial house within the grounds. They're neighbours, as it were, to the castle. Are they likely to move, or would they much rather stay where they are?
I think they'd rather stay where they are. It's called a cottage. It's quite a big cottage, but it's down the drive. It's not. It's a
royal cottage.
But it's not. I mean, by royal standards, it's pretty modest. But it's very much sort of it's perfect family home. It's a sort of separate unit with its own garden, and it's much better, I think, for young children to live in the castle. And I think we'll see the King. I mean, the King's already now spending a lot more time at the castle in the private apartments, which is right next to the state apartments. And I think he will do more of that. I think, there is in the same way that people expect the monarch to be at Buckingham Palace during the week, they rather expect the monarch to be at Windsor. And having now become the Ranger of the Great Park, the King is going to need to spend a lot of time there anyway, keeping an eye on it. It's a big old piece of it's a very large, very ancient estate, and there's a lot that needs to be attended to.
And of course, in its full restored glory, it formed such an amazing backdrop for the recent funeral. It was just a fantastic sort of legacy that it got to its former state.
Yeah, I mean, it is the most wonderful. It's the largest inhabited castle in the world. I mean, just the roof alone, I think, covers something like 13 acres. It's got over 1,500 rooms. I mean, it's absolutely what the world comes to think of as a castle. And it's why, nearly 1 million people a year come and look around it, even though you've got the royal family, or was the Queen, now the King, in living in a corner of it. And it's also a community. It's a thriving community. Yes. I mean, there are more than 300 people, because of choir and clergy and the military knights, all these people live in it. So actually at night, when the sort of the drawbridge comes up, as it were, inside it, it's sort of teeming, sort of medieval-style community. You suddenly see children coming out on skateboards. I mean, I've been there. It's wonderful. It's a sort of magic. It's a kingdom within a kingdom.
Yeah, and what was wonderful, I think, why the Queen and Prince Philip loved it, but the Queen particularly, was because she could ride there every weekend. And I still think that one of the most poignant images from the funeral was when the cortege was moving up the long walk towards the castle, and just in the corner of the picture, you could see a little black... I was doing commentary for an Australian company, and we could just see this little black dot, and I thought, what the devil is that? And of course, it was Emma. It was her.
Emma the fell pony.
It was her fell pony, and for me, that was the most poignant thing. But I think that all encapsulated how important that castle is to the family.
It absolutely was. It was so
perfect.
Close to her heart, and that was a beautiful way. And of course, that's where she now resides for eternity. She's there, reunited with her parents. Underneath St George's Chapel. That's all she wanted. That's where she was going to go.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Robert Hardman, for joining us. And Robert's book, Queen of Our Times, The Life of Elizabeth II, is on sale now. So, more to come, including all the news and views from this morning's newspapers with Claire Muldoon and Fraser Myers.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for The Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Angela and Martin.
And it's time for the newspapers. But before we do that, can I quickly blast through the fact we've got this Twitter poll running all morning. There's only 39 minutes left to go. Would you vote for Brexit again? It's been running at 80% yes, Brexit all morning. Remain Twitter has obviously woken up and got a hold of this. They're doing what they normally do. And it's swung. It's now 55% Brexit. It's getting very close to the real thing. Angela, I'm getting flashbacks of that fateful day itself.
You are.
I'm getting really excited.
Calm down,
News,
Martin.
your country needs you. I know I'm meant to be
Calm
neutral.
down. You're neutral.
Brexit run the real vote.
No, let's take a look at the front pages. We've got with us, as we say, in our studio, our two reviewers, but the front pages are telling us, well, the Times at least, saying that Britain's is going to mull over Swiss-style ties with Brussels as it believes that EU relations are thawing.
And that was the front page, of course, that's kicked off our Twitter poll. Meanwhile, The Observer writes that Keir Starmer will abolish the House of Lords to restore trust in politics.
And a bonfire of NHS pen pushers, says the Mail, as ministers vowing to axe red tape in the health service to save taxpayers' money.
And The Express goes with shameless as they discuss the FIFA boss's comments on human rights critics in Qatar ahead of the World Cup. There's lots and lots of spice to go at this morning, loads and loads of it. But your country needs you, says the Mirror, not only to support England, but also to get onto the GB News Twitter poll. Come on, get out there. Get out there, people, and get voting. Let's get to the studio now. Fraser. You've got a classic story here. Don't say gender critical. Ministry of Justice staff warned. It sounds like more wokeism gone mad.
Yeah, in the civil service of all places, who could have guessed? So essentially, staff at the Ministry of Justice have been sent this glossary of terms from their diversity and inclusion officers, saying that there are certain words and phrases that are coded and contain kind of transphobic views surreptitiously. So you shouldn't use the term gender critical, which is the term that a lot of feminists use to describe themselves when they believe in biological sex. And get this, one of the things that is also a transphobic dog whistle is saying you want to protect women and girls.
Really?
That is considered to be transphobic because then you're about to say that, you know, women should have single-sex spaces, have a right to privacy, etc., etc.
Who's come up with this?
This is from the prison service and their diversity and inclusions unit. And you know, prisons have a terrible track record when it comes to this stuff, allowing convicted rapists to share cells with women and things like that, and with the obvious consequences of what happens next.
Doesn't it sum up the world we live in now, Angela, that in 2022, the wrong position to take is to want to protect women and girls? Seriously,
I'm speechless.
That's the wrong thing to do.
It's just the sheer Orwellianism of the sort of trans ideology, the woke ideology, that you shouldn't, you know, you're not even allowed to describe what is going on, you know.
I just want to know who these people are that come up with this and who they think they're offending when you say it.
Well, such a waste of money.
It is.
Such a waste of money. And this is coming out from the prison service. Now, come on, I think they've got bigger fish to fry and more things to do in there in terms of rehabilitation of offenders. And actually, the whole probation service and the prison service need, you know, a complete lockdown in terms of what they're doing, and they need to be re-educated themselves in actually how to maintain criminals in situ. I'm not interested in diversity and inclusion.
No.
No, I would like to put an end to wokeism, actually.
Good for you. Your popularity just soared in GBNews land. All we've got to do now is vote for Brexit on this poll and you'll be there. You'll be the full ticket.
Martin, stop it!
I'm just really too excited.
That's not.
It's like the real thing.
Got your thumb on the scale.
Stop it and let's let Claire tell us about the next story she wants to talk about.
Just stop, Martin.
I've been told off for being... I need to be neutral. I know, I am neutral. Claire.
Incredulity. That's going to make the paper review. It always does, Angela. Now, this is a story here in the Mirror from a story that was front pages yesterday. My heart goes out to Zara's family, and Zara being Zara Arlene, who was murdered in horrendous circumstances and left for dead by Jordan McSweeney. Now, this is it's an article, but it's written by Jordan McSweeney's one of his ex-girlfriend's mother, and she tells of a horrendous time that her daughter had when she was going out with him. So clearly the alarm bells were there. Now, let's not forget, Jordan McSweeney was released, right, on probation, on licence. He missed his probation he didn't turn up to the police. The police couldn't find him. 28 counts he was being held accountable for of grievous bodily harm, sexual assault, and having under control of a knife. 2 days later, he murdered that beautiful, beautiful law graduate and left her for dead. Now, the probation service, and that makes me even more cross, that they're more concerned about diversity and inclusion, are being paid to set these things up. This is the real story. This is the real life. This is what they ought to be doing. And, you know, the police service as well, and I don't want to make it metropolitan-centric here because clearly GB News is the national news outlet. But honestly, Mark Rowley has got a big job to do in terms of recruiting police, making making the country safer. And I'm all for Bobby's on the beat, back in the beat, because it's proven, it's scientifically proven that if you have police officers on the beat, in the ground, working with the communities, that makes communities safer. And it was all very well for Rishi Sunak yesterday I'm probably going to trigger the woke brigade that Fraser's just spoken about, but he wants to make the streets safer for women, and he's using his children, his daughters, as a,
which is a perfectly valid thing to do.
Exactly.
Yes. We must move on to want to get in one quick story again. Fraser, the no deal at the climate summit. I think
there has been a deal now.
down the road, haven't they?
Yes. So there's been a sort of semi-deal since the papers came out. They've agreed in principle to this kind of loss and damage fund, which is essentially giving money to the developing world because they suffer the most from climate change, is the kind of argument. But of course, they've not agreed on how much money should be given. They haven't agreed who should pay because there's a dispute over whether China and India should contribute to those funds.
Of course they should.
They're developing countries, but they're now some of the biggest emitters in the world. And I think what a lot of this shows is that every time there's a COP event every year, at the beginning it's all tub-thumping rhetoric. You had the head of the UN's climate division saying we're going to hell we're on a highway to hell and our foot is on the accelerator. But then by the end of the summit, they never reach an agreement.
Nope.
And the reason they never reach an agreement is because it's not in any country's interest to get rid of fossil fuels.
And that's what they've done this time. They've kicked the can down the road and said that we'll tell you what we're going to do in 2020. No, 2000 and COP 28.
Next year,
COP 28.
COP 28, which is going to be hosted in the United Arab Emirates.
Yes.
There we go. Yeah.
Very environmental.
I think the COPs are a COP out.
It's a COP
but
out.
also it's the new Davos.
Totally.
Yeah.
Chambers. Thank you very much, Fraser. Thank you very much. We'll see you in the next hour. Is that it?
No, that's
we'll
it.
be talking about all of this.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks.
It's what's the time now? It's just got a quarter to 9, hasn't it? Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories. The Home Office says a man staying at the Manston Migrant Processing Centre has died after becoming unwell. It's understood that he crossed to the UK in a small boat earlier this month and he became ill on Friday evening. A spokesperson says there is currently no evidence that he died from an infectious disease.
The CPS is reviewing evidence into an alleged cash for honours scandal involving one of the King's charities. Newspaper reports claimed that the former Prince's Foundation CEO, Michael Fawcett, promised to help a Saudi billionaire donor achieve British citizenship and a knighthood. The King and Mr Fawcett were both referred to the police by an anti-monarchy group. Buckingham Palace said it would not comment on an ongoing police inquiry.
A new report by the Fawcett Society is calling for urgent measures by employers and the government to close the gender pay gap. The campaign says research shows this year women will, on average, take home £564 less than men each month. The group are saying that women face extra pressures due to the difference in pay and the rising cost of living.
And England captain Harry Kane is expected to wear his One Love rainbow armband during the World Cup in Qatar. New armbands have been created for the tournament, but 9 European nations, including Wales, are set to keep the band that shows support for LGBTQ people. Now, the wives of England's football teams, the Wags, have reportedly been told to refrain from wearing short skirts. Good luck with that. And low-cut tops for the World Cup in Qatar.
I must stop laughing about this. Today, the tournament kicks off with millions of fans expected to travel to watch the games. Showbiz reporter Stephanie is here to tell us more about the dress code and what they can expect. Oh, poor darlings. Do they have to go out and buy a whole new wardrobe that is long and covered and with sleeves?
Yeah, Angela, they didn't need an excuse. But this is not going to be a show like the 2006 World Cup where we had style icons such as Colleen, Victoria Beckham and then Cheryl Cole, who got to come out in shorts, crop tops, bikinis. It's going to be very much a different show for the Qatar World Cup because it is an Islamic country. While FIFA has told fans you can wear whatever you want, you have to be respectful of the country. And for women, that means they have to have their shoulders covered, they have to wear skirts and dresses and trousers past their knees, they have to cover their neckline, no revealing cleavage or showing off your midriff. So quite a few of the wags, as we like to call them, have hired the help of a stylist to veto their wardrobe. So, you know, as within any World Cup, the big story as well is the wives, the footballer wives. And in this one, we're going to be looking out for people such as Katie Kane, who's married to the captain, Harry Kane. We've got Paige Paige Milan, who's married to Raheem Sterling, and then also we've got Jack Grealish's girlfriend, Sasha Atwood. So these are going to be some of the names, and as you can see here...
Oh, look at that. Yes, you go down well in the Muslim country.
They like to reveal stuff, but this is just when they're out and about in Qatar, but actually they're going to be living a life of luxury on board a cruise liner on a super yacht called the MSC World Europa cruise liner, which is docked off the coast of Doha, and they are going to be living it up in there because there's 13 restaurants, a spa, expensive jewellery shops, a full butler service, and of course a crystal staircase made out of Swarovski.
I wonder, actually. OK, this is good gossip. It's funny.
Yeah. It's girl talk.
Qatar, is a very ostentatious nation. We've already heard that the price of this World Cup is about the last 8 tournaments combined and then double.
Yeah.
But is this the right time, do you think, with the cost of living crisis at home, with the retail downturn? Is this the right time for wags to be lodging it and flashing their cash about?
Well, to be honest, Martin, I think it's something they do all year round.
Yeah.
So, even if they're at home, they're still going to flaunt their wealth. And to be honest, it's what's expected from them. It's like, footballers donate a lot to charities, but the wives always tend to stick out of it. The wives give the public that glamorous persona, which we do expect of a footballer's wives, and they even know it's going to be even more so. The whole world is going to be looking at them during these matches, so they have to be dressed to impress. But luckily in Qatar, even though it is ostentatious, they're going to have to be quite refined and they're going to have to be conservative, so it might not be a splash of wealth in a kind of ostentatious way that we're used to.
But do we know the sort of sanctions that are likely to be taken, or actions that are likely to be taken, if they do turn up in shorts and crops?
Well, potentially they could end up with a jail sentence, for just wearing the wrong clothes. So I don't think any of them are risking it, and that's why they have taken it seriously and have got stylists. But I can imagine, guys, over the next few weeks when we're going to get perhaps pictures of them on the cruise liners in their hot bikinis, so it'll be a different story, and it's a different story for the fans as well, who are not living in such rich accommodations.
Thanks very much indeed, Steph. We will be watching the tabloids to see what they do end up in. Well, more to come, including the countdown to the Qatar World Cup, of course, but that's coming up after the weather.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK will be wet and cloudy in the east with rain clearing, sunshine and showers in the west. Here are the details. Across southwest England, after a dry start to the day, blustery showers will spread eastwards. These could be heavy at times, with a risk of a thunderstorm for western coasts. Cloud and rain will linger across southeast England at first, though once this clears, it will be a dry morning with some sunny spells. There'll be a mixture of sunshine and scattered blustery showers across South Wales this morning. These showers could be heavy and thundery. After early rain and cloud clears, it will be a dry and fine start across the Midlands, with sunny spells. Scattered showers that could be heavy at times will affect the west later. Cloud and rain will clear northeast England through the first part of the morning. This will leave a dry period with some sunny spells ahead of showers moving in from the west later. A band of rain will clear southern Scotland early this morning. This will be followed by a mixture of sunshine and scattered showers, and some of these could be heavy. There'll be a mixture of sunshine and scattered blustery showers across Northern Ireland this morning. Some of these showers could be heavy, with hail and thunder at times. So showers will continue to spread eastwards throughout this afternoon before easing into the evening with clear spells developing. That's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
The World Cup kicks off in Qatar today.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on Sunday the 20th of November. This is Breakfast on GB News with Angela Rippon and myself, Martin Dubney.
Now we are live across the whole of the UK, both on your television and indeed your radio, which means wherever you are, you can take us with you. Now here's what's making the news this morning.
There's just hours to go until the much anticipated Football World Cup kicks off. It's the first to take place in winter and the first to be hosted by a Muslim country. We'll bring you everything you need to know.
Rishi Sunak has met with Ukraine's President Zelensky in Kyiv, promising them £50 million in defence aid. It's his first visit to the country since becoming Prime Minister.
Meanwhile, the government are planning Swiss-style relationships with the European Union in an attempt to boost trade relations.
Now, all morning we have been asking you if you would vote differently for Brexit now if you were given the opportunity. So you can have your say on our Twitter poll at GB News.
And a quick update on that.
It's upsetting him.
And GB News viewers, your country needs you to participate in this because Remain has surged ahead. 51% to 49. It's a slight reverse of the actual Brexit. I'm not at all upset about this. It's all about democracy. Anyway, it's been 30 years since the Windsor Castle fire destroyed 115 rooms, including 9 staterooms, back in 1992. Our reporter will be live from the Queen's former residence.
I tell you, he's really upset about this. As ever, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews at gbnews@gbnews.co.uk. Now, to... So to our top story. Over half a decade of controversy we've had, and the 2022 FIFA World Cup is starting today in Qatar, as the hosts are facing Ecuador in Doha.
Now, human rights groups have criticised its treatment of foreign workers as well as its stance on same-sex relationships.
England's going to kick off their World Cup tomorrow when they play against Iran, which is set to be marred by the ongoing unrest at home in Iran.
So let's chat to our reporter Paul Hawkins, who is on at the Doha Corniche in Qatar. And I understand earlier we saw some England fans in the background. Are they still with you?
Yeah, that's right. No, they're not. They've now moved away. In fact, I think we've got some... I'm going to guess that they're from the USA, American fans. Hi, are you all right?
Hello, how are you?
He's very observant.
I'm just going to guess you're an American fan, looking at those shorts.
How'd you know?
You do know where this World Cup is, looking at those shorts.
I do.
You do?
Hey, skies out, thighs out.
Right, OK. I think you'd get arrested in the UK for wearing them, possibly.
You're saying you like them?
Yeah, I love them.
All right.
I love them. Take care.
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you too. See, we're having a horrible time here at the moment, but that's the kind of atmosphere that's generated by the fans here. Everyone's coming together, and football really becoming a kind of unifying force. But I wanted to kind of get stuck into more about how people who know Doha are feeling. So we can talk now to Johnny Vegas, who's a luxury lifestyle management expert. Johnny, really good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us. You know Doha really well. Have you ever seen it like this?
Thanks so much for having me, Toby. You know what? Doha is changing to something incredible right now. It's live everywhere. The fans are here. Like you come on nighttime here, this place is full of people. So no, I have never seen it like this. It's incredible right now.
Yeah, and is it ready? Because there's been some criticism that Qatar isn't quite ready over there. They're still getting the grass ready. Some of the fans' accommodation isn't quite up to scratch.
No, it's absolutely ready. I mean, if you're a fan and you come into the, Doha to watch the World Cup, I mean, you have many places to go and to entertain yourself for you and your family, such as you have the Corniche where they have the fan activation, you have Amaha Island where Lucille is, where you go to Winter Wonderland and you enjoy yourself. Great restaurants like Zuma, you have Namus where you can enjoy yourself, as well as you have malls, you have fan zones from here to all the way up to the stadium areas. So you're just going to be too busy not to do something when you're in Doha, like during this World Cup.
Yeah, and a lot's been made about the fact that this is happening in an Islamic country for the first time. Islam, of course, the country's religion, and that impacts on how on LGBTQ plus rights, and also on alcohol. And there's been some criticism, or at least it's been flagged up a lot in the media about that. And I know it's something you wanted to talk about.
I mean, yeah. Listen, you can have alcohol here in the fan zones areas and many areas that you're really going to have entertainment. In the stadium, obviously, it's been announced that you can have it, you cannot have it. I think you can survive not having alcohol for 1 hour or two enjoying the game. I think the most important thing is that you have alcohol in the most important area, and that is in the fan zone areas where you can watch amazing artists and have great entertainment and you can enjoy yourself.
Yeah, I'm slightly concerned that some of the fans, they'll actually see what their football team's really like without alcohol. They might get quite surprised about that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, listen, I think this World Cup is about uniting people and bringing people together and fans together. So I think when you go to the stadium, you're really going to enjoy the game. It's for the family, it's for the fans that invested to be here and to enjoy the game. And I think it's amazing. I think it's going to be incredible.
Yeah, and what about the football itself? Who are you looking forward to seeing?
I'm going to be biased, so I'm going to go with USA since from America. However, I do have some teams that in mind that I think I wanted to advance, and that one is UK, and then the other one is obviously Brazil.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Brazil to win?
USA to win, but Brazil to go.
You're going for USA to win the World Cup?
100%. Yeah, I'm a believer. USA all the way.
Yeah, okay, yeah. If only they were hosting the next World Cup. Eh?
Yeah, we're going to bring it home and keep it home. for the next 8 years.
Yeah. Johnny, really good to talk to you. Thanks so much for speaking to us. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. That's Johnny Vegas, there. He's a luxury lifestyle travel expert. He kind of looks after a lot of the footballers who come over here, not those that are playing in the tournament, but friends of those that are playing. So he tends to kind of help out with their travel arrangements, etc. But he's very well connected and he knows Doha very well. Listen, there's only 4 hours to go until this World Cup kicks off. It's going to be different from the other ones we know, and it'll be interesting to see how it pans out over the next month, which, by the way, makes it the shortest World Cup since 1978 as well.
Thank you very much for your time out there and enjoy the rest of the tournament. I want to go to you, Aidan. First of all, I've got to say, Johnny Vegas has lost a lot of weight. and he also appears to have changed race.
That one was funnier than the one we know.
You might have heard me muttering there because I didn't realise my microphone was live. But I mean, I know nothing about football, as you know, and have even less interest in it. But even I know that the chances of America winning the World Cup...
They've improved. They're not the mugs they were 30 years ago. They've generally improved. There'll be a tough opposition for Wales tomorrow and for England as well later.
So we've spoken loads and loads about the politics. It's completely overshadowed this tournament for too long. But how about we do something really old-fashioned, AIDS, and we talk about the actual teams?
Exactly.
I mean, England are kicking off tomorrow. How are they looking? Who's playing?
Well, I look at England's lead up into this tournament. Now, if it was any other event, whether it be Euros or World Cup, we'd be talking about the fact that England haven't won a game since March. England have got... That means they've 9 months since their last tasted victory. They've gone 6 without a win. If they go 7 without a win, I think we've not actually gone 7 without a win since the 1950s. But you know what? It might actually benefit England. We've seen how before in the lead up to previous tournaments where extraneous issues overshadowed the actual football and actually played into England's hands. We think about all the problems before Italia 90. Bob Robson, is he going to be keeping his job? No, they said they weren't going to release his contract. But it allowed them to focus on football. They knew where they stood. Euro 96, the dentist chair incident in Hong Kong. Yep. It took away from the football and they had a good tournament. Nobody's talking about the nuts and bolts of England's form. Phil Foden, as predicted by Mystic McGee here last Thursday, it looks like he's going to play. That's what the papers are saying this morning. We know James Maddison isn't going to play, despite all the furore about whether he's going to be included in the squad or not. Harry Kane's going to be up front. This is a tough group for England. Make no mistake, Iran qualified very, very handsomely throughout their section. They have plenty of players in Europe. It's the only group in the entire tournament where every team is inside the top 20. Wales will be tough opponents. USA very, very durable compared to what they were a couple of decades ago. Again, lots of European-based players, some real stellar names in there. It's going to be hard for England. I think they will get out of the group. After that, anything can happen. I still think they're a quarter-final team, though, Martin.
I still think, though, that amongst the fan base, certainly the ones that I talk to, a lot of the football lads, they're not especially interested in the team at the moment. And certainly, they're very critical of Gareth Southgate.
Yeah, they are. Look, wait until the ball's kicked and see how things shape up then. Because when we see on our television screen, we see the pitch, we see the goals, we see the stadium. It's a very Europeanised model. It's going to be like watching a Champions League game because it's in the winter, of course, as well. Yes, OK, we're not going to see matches in darkness necessarily, but that's when the football takes over. And we've seen it before. I mean, I did Brazil in 2014 and the infrastructure problems before that. It just evaporated. Security was a massive issue in South Africa in 2010. It just evaporated. You know, there were no discernible problems in South Africa, not major ones anyway. Certainly not what was predicted. And we just and that mood of negativity gave way to the football. I'm really hoping against hope that might happen as of today. Yes, it's a poor game to start today. You have to have the host nation first. Qatar against Ecuador, but tomorrow you'll start seeing some decent games.
OK, so Johnny Vegas there said USA to win. I think, like Johnny Vegas, he might like a drop of the old jungle juice. That sort of prediction.
Well, you do know that later in the programme we're going to be talking to somebody who owns an alpaca, who reckons that the alpaca can actually pick who's likely to win.
Well, let me tell you about this, right? I was involved in all this nonsense in my previous job. I had to go to a zoo and watch a lion come out of his den. And we had a box with England and we had a box with the opponent. And we had some meat under the England one, so it was always going to go to England. And 3 times in a row I went to Whipsnade Zoo and predicted, oh, there you go, Lenny the Lion has predicted another England win, even though there's a massive slab of fillet steak under the box.
So you're telling me these stunts are rigged?
Oh, no, but who'd have thought?
Surely not.
The alpaca, we're going to raise the bar later on with the alpaca. There's no stunting there whatsoever. It's going to be a much better thing.
So stunts aside, who are your tips to take the trophy?
Well, the GB News sweepstake, I was delighted to have drawn Brazil this week. They have quality throughout their squad. They've done nothing at recent World Cups. 2000 2002 was last time they won it. Quarter-final stage in 2006. Humiliated by Germany and Brazil back in 2014. Didn't really do much in Russia either. So, but you look at the quality, laced with quality throughout the squad. I mean, 2 goalkeepers, Ederson at Manchester City, Alisson at Liverpool. I mean, they're 2 of the best goalkeepers in the world.
There's also Lionel Messi. This is going to be his final tournament. Could it be a fitting swan song?
It could be, yeah. Argentina are unbeaten in 33 games going into this tournament, and Argentina don't play poor opponents. They're an in-demand team to play against around the world, so they don't play many games against poor opposition. That's a hell of a record going into it. Yes, they haven't won it since 1986. They appeared in the final in 2014 and in 1990. It could be their time to shine again. But there are so many variables. Who handles the heat best? Who handles the travel between the grounds? It's not very far apart, but this intense heat at the training grounds. England were shocked to discover that it was 32 degrees at their training ground when they arrived the other day.
Yeah.
So who copes with that? What about the injuries? France have lost Benzema, N'Golo Kante and Paul Pogba. That's the triumvirate of their team that got them over the line last time.
That's annoyed me because I've got them in the sweepstakes. Aidan, want to thank you and move on for there. Thanks
nice
for your time.
Catch you in a little while.
All the best. Cheers. So let's check in with our West Midlands reporter, Jack Carson, who is checking out the football fever in Solihull.
Are you on the road all day doing these? Or?
Well, welcome here to the home of Birmingham Bohemians here in Solihull, and I'm joined now by their player, Ryan Swain. Ryan, it's a World Cup, but it's a different feel because it's a Winter World Cup. How has this kind of changed the way you feel around the World Cup?
I mean, probably being selfish, more concerned about sort of your own players in your own team in the league. You know, you've got a couple of players playing. If they're injured, the likes, you know, you've seen Mane and whatnot get injured. If your players are injured during this World Cup, could affect you in the rest of the season.
So, are you as excited as a usual kind of summer tournament? Are you going to be as keen to watch as many games as you can?
No, I mean, it's probably going to be difficult as well. I'm in the hospitality industry. A lot of the kick-offs are on our peak periods, the 1 o'clock kick-off to 7 o'clock, so I'm probably going to miss them anyway. But yeah, I think it's just timing-wise, and then, you know, with everything, Christmas coming up, people are working more coming up to Christmas. I think, yeah, I'm not as excited as I have been in the past for tournaments now. No.
One of the big features of summer tournaments, European Championships, World Cups, is, of course, those fan zones, thousands of people, you know, chucking beer in the air when England score a goal. Is that something you've been to before, or are you going to be just watching things from home this time?
Yeah, probably just be watching things from home, I think. I know they've got a few games on here, so a couple of the guys will probably stay for the 1 o'clock kick-offs after the game and whatnot, so we'll probably play here and then stay and then come here when we can. But yeah, most of it probably going to be at home.
And what do you make of England's chances?
It's the heat, I think. I've seen the training videos so far. They look like they're struggling in the heat, so they've got a good squad. It's whether they can cope with the heat out there for a month in a long tournament.
Ryan, thank you. Well, Ryan's not alone in fans deciding to watch games from home rather than go out to places like pubs and sports bars to watch them, because in a survey reported in Forbes.com last week, from 4,500 British consumers surveyed, 84% say they would be staying at home this winter to watch the World Cup. So football fever still here in the UK, but maybe people not going out and not as strong as a summer tournament might bring.
Jack, thanks ever so much. Thanks very much indeed, and I hope that you and your guest both enjoy watching wherever you watch the games. Now, let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
After negotiations through the night, a deal has finally been agreed at COP27 to help poor countries deal with the impact of climate change. The so-called Loss and Damage Fund will help developing nations bear the cost of disasters such as drought and flooding. However, a decision on exactly which countries should have to pay has been left until COP28 next year.
Senior government officials are considering getting a Swiss-style trading relationship with Europe. That's according to the Sunday Times today. Switzerland's trade agreements with the EU give them direct access to parts of the internal market. It would take the UK 10 years to change to the deal. But Downing Street sources have rejected this report.
And the Housing Secretary has written to every English council leader and social housing provider, warning that deaths like that of Awab Ishaq must never happen again. The 2-year-old died as a result of prolonged exposure to mould. The chief executive of Rochdale Borough-wide Housing, Gareth Swarbrick, was sacked yesterday. Michael Gove said the country must raise the bar dramatically on the quality of housing and ensure tenants' voices are heard.
Members of Animal Rebellion occupied Gordon Ramsay's 3 Michelin star restaurant last night. The climate activists held mock menus outlining the environmental cost of items that were served at the restaurant, Gordon Ramsay in Chelsea. The group issued a statement saying that they're campaigning for a plant-based food system. Well, as we mentioned in the headlines there, the UK could form a Swiss-style tie with Brussels, but that's a story that's according to the Sunday Times.
And the pledge comes as the senior government officials claim massive support for European security from the UK will help to lead to a frictionless trade deal.
Well, our political reporter Olivia Utley is with us here again. Olivia, have you been taking the pulse of any MPs or other people to get a feel for this story?
Well, yes, and the more I hear, the more sceptical I am about it. It sounds a bit as though someone relatively junior, maybe, in Downing Street was sort of hoping this might be the case and perhaps had drummed up some support among more junior people in Downing Street and then has been briefing it to the Sunday Times. But MPs are, as one, furious about the idea. Well, they don't really think it's true, but if it were true, they would be furious because their constituents voted for them because they thought the Conservatives were going to deliver Brexit. Remember, the Conservatives didn't even have a proper majority before the 2019 general election and then won all those votes in seats which had never voted Tory before among Brexiteers who wanted to see Brexit go through properly. This Swiss-style deal was explicitly rejected by Boris Johnson and Lord Frost 3 years ago. Since we last spoke, Steve Barclay, the Health Secretary, who of course was former Brexit Secretary, has said that he doesn't recognise anything in these reports at all. So it might all be a bit of a drama about nothing, but no smoke without fire.
But is this irresponsible of the Times to have run the story in the first place, then, without having a full check on it?
Well, they would like us to rejoin them, sure, so the Times are pushing their agenda,
but,
perhaps.
You know, as a quality newspaper on Sunday, running a story which is then immediately poo-pooed by Number 10.
Well, yes, I mean, I wouldn't like to go as far as to say that it was irresponsible of them because I don't know what they heard, and it could be that this idea was aired by someone senior in Downing Street, push on the front page of the Sunday Times to kind of test the water, see what the reaction would be among backbenchers and among the country. Now it's been so bad, perhaps they're immediately backing away. So it's not necessarily the case that the Sunday Times is sort of making it up or making something out of nothing. But I would say that it now sounds, whatever the case was yesterday or earlier in the week, it now sounds pretty unlikely that the government could pursue a policy like this.
But the fact of the matter is, though, even if it was a fabricated leak, even if it was wishful thinking from somebody who would like this to happen, be that a junior, be that a reporter, this sticks, doesn't it? We're talking about it all morning. People do think there's a suspicious rejoiner movement within the Sunak camp, particularly Jeremy Hunt, who was an arch Remainer, wanted a second referendum all along. And this is what people talk about, and they've become, I think, more and more sceptical of the actual grit to stand by what the electorate voted for in 2019.
I think that's true, but I think it would be foolish to sort of underestimate the extent to which people like Jeremy Hunt are still massively have to keep on side the hardline Brexiteers in the party. We saw, Liz Truss herself was a Remainer, for example, but she knew that to get anything through Parliament now, after that 2019 election, when we saw lots of proper Brexiteer MPs come into Parliament, and the whole point of the whole manifesto of the 2019 election was to get Brexit done. Yeah. There is no mandate in the country for rejoining the EU at the moment, and MPs know that. So sort of whoever's in charge, in a way, even if, Jeremy Hunt and his civil servants, let's say, wanted to get some much closer deal with the EU, it would be very hard to see how they could possibly do it politically.
Yeah. OK, well, thank you for that. The voters voted to get Brexit done, and some breaking news on the GB News poll, which has just closed. You also voted to get Brexit done, despite a late surge from the Remain camp. Basically, it is now...
Right, we'll take a look at the detail after the break because we've got so much more to come in the programme today, including the Cornish charity worker who is providing disaster relief to Ukraine.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio,
And online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Good morning and welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Angela Rippon and myself, Martin Daubney.
It's been 30 years since a fire broke out at Windsor Castle and destroyed the fifth of the historic building, including 9 staterooms and both St George's Hall and Brunswick Tower.
The Queen was shocked by the devastation of her favourite home, and the events surrounding the fire have recently been dramatised in the latest series of The Crown. Our reporter, Alice Porter, is outside the castle for us. Good morning, Alice.
Hi there, good morning to you. Yes, it's incredible to think it's 30 years since that fire took place, and it began in Queen Victoria's private chapel, and a faulty spotlight lit a curtain next to the altar, and the fire then began and blazed through the castle there, and it took an incredible 9 hours to bring it under control. It was about 11:30 that the fire services were first alerted to the fire, and they came 225 firefighters, and it was an extraordinary task to bring it under control. It was a 1.5 billion gallons of water, which I think gives you some indication there of the scale of the problem. Now, luckily, the Queen was not at Windsor Castle at the time, although she did very soon come from Buckingham Palace to the scene to try and assist the firefighters, who were very much in a chain trying to remove some of the precious artwork, because that was the real concern, really, was how many important artefacts and artwork that is in Windsor Castle. Luckily, only 2 artworks were lost, but that was very much due to the diligence of the 225 firefighters from the surrounding area. Now, Paul Thomas was one of those firefighters, and he gives his recollections of what happened on that day.
As we sort of turned out onto the M4, we could see the smoke from the fire engine, and as you go down the relief road to Windsor, you could see huge plumes of smoke coming over the top of the castle. And I can remember going into St George's Hall, I think it was. There were some huge paintings on the wall. We got some ladders, and we were up the ladders unscrewing the frames from the paintings and then taking the paintings off the walls, and it was getting smokier and smokier and smokier until we were told then to leave because it was getting too smoky and too dangerous.
And we should remember, of course, Alice, that this was part of what Her Majesty referred to as her annus horribilis, wasn't it? It was a pretty rotten year for her, one way and another.
It really was. That was the speech she gave just 4 days after the fire took place. And it's important to stress that Windsor Castle was very much her home. And I think we've seen recently in The Crown, in the latest series there, these very sort of tragic images of the Queen, played by Imelda Staunton, sort of standing there in the rubble, because this was very much her home. And as you said, they're very much the culmination of a pretty terrible year. 3 out of 4 of the Queen's children announced their separation. Of course, in particular, the one that stands out was Princess Diana and Prince Charles. Lots of very embarrassing leaked videos, which obviously did nothing to endear the public to the royal family at a time, because there was a lot of criticism about the cost of the royal family at the time. And then there was the real challenge about who was going to be paying for the restoration of Windsor Castle, which was about £40 million worth of damage. In the end, the Queen did foot the bill by opening up Buckingham Palace for the first time to tourists. But it was an extraordinary feat of restoration. As you said there in your introduction, 1/5 of the castle had been damaged. But it took about 5 years, and actually 5 years to the day that the fire took place. It was on the 1997, on the 20th of November, which was in fact the golden anniversary of the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh, that Windsor Castle was in fact finally restored to the royal family and to the public.
Alice, thank you very much indeed. And it's rather nice that today, because it is the anniversary again of what would have been their 75th wedding anniversary, isn't it? It looks as if it's a lovely sunny day there with lots of visitors. Now, millions of people across Ukraine are bracing for temperatures as low as -15 degrees centigrade as they continue to live in damaged homes with limited or indeed no heating at all.
But what are people doing about it? Well, Cornwall-based disaster relief charity Shelterbox has sent essential aid to Ukraine, designed to help people survive a long and harsh winter.
So joining us live now from Kyiv this morning is Rachel Harvey, Shelterbox Programme Manager for Ukraine. And we were seeing, thank you for joining us to start with, Rachel, but we were seeing from news clips that it's been snowing, so it must be particularly cold there. Tell us just how vital the service that you're providing is to the people of Ukraine at this moment.
You can probably see the snow behind me. There was another fall overnight. We've just got back to the capital city, Kyiv. The temperatures now are about 0. Where we were overnight in the neighbouring province of Chernihiv, the temperature dropped as low as -8, and it's only November. So imagine how much colder that's going to get as we move further into winter. We're just at the beginning of the cold months now. There's at least 4 more months of this kind of weather. So the kind of aid we're bringing in is targeted at people who are still living in homes that are damaged. Now, some of those people have stayed throughout the war. Others fled further west, when the war was at its height earlier on, but have now moved back to their homes and are moving back into damaged properties. Now, through the summer months, if you've got a hole in your roof, or maybe one of the windows is blown out, you can probably cope with that. But in this sort of weather, that's not sustainable. And it's not just a little bit chilly. This is potentially life-threatening. So the kind of aid we're bringing in is shelter repair kits, which will allow people to patch up those homes, seal off the building to keep the snow out and the warmth in.
And what sort of things are you providing for them beyond that? I mean, are you taking blankets? Are you taking anything that will help them to heat their homes?
That's a really good question. So if you think of it this way, we kind of work from the outside in. So the first things we look at is how to make that building secure and safe. So hard-wearing tarpaulins, also some wooden struts so you can properly repair a roof, hard plastic sheeting to seal up windows and ceiling foam, and the tools to go with that. But then if you work in, what's the next thing you need? Well, some source of heating for the house if none exists. And if you haven't got any power, then electric heating isn't going to work. So we're also providing solid fuel stoves and a supply of firewood for the winter. Then you come down to the individuals, keeping them warm. So that's where we're bringing in high thermal blankets. Most of the aid is already here, which is great. We've just got a couple more trucks to come in. We're also providing some winter clothing, hats, gloves, jackets. And then the final item is solar lighting. Because of the rolling power cuts here, a lot of the power infrastructure has been damaged during the war and is being targeted now in the latest waves of attacks. About 50% now of the power infrastructure is not functioning. So those solar lights, as the days draw in, become increasingly important.
So, Rachel, this is a superb boots on the ground initiative. Tell us, how can our viewers get involved to help donate?
Well, there's two ways of doing it, really. One is if people can afford to do so, and we do understand how difficult economic times are back home, but if you can afford to do so, donate the money that you can spare. Go to shelterbox.org and give what you can. If you can't give directly, then maybe go to our website and look for some fundraising ideas. Any way you and your community can just get a little bit of money together, because people here really do appreciate it. We've spoken to people, I've spoken to people directly. Any aid that we've given in our first projects, they are incredibly, incredibly grateful and appreciative. And you know, the people that we've spoken to say, we're not asking for a lot. Just give us a little bit of a leg up to start with, and we'll take it from there.
Rachel, I am so impressed with what you're doing, really. It is absolutely fantastic. So congratulations to the work that you're doing, and just hang in there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And you stay warm yourself. It looks pretty cold there. Thank you. Do stay with us, because we have plenty more to come, including the final results of our Brexit poll. And we'll have our very own debate on the subject right here.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Good morning and welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Angela Rippon and myself, Martin Daubney.
All morning, we've been discussing whether or not you would or would not vote for Brexit if you were given the opportunity again.
And that's because today the Sunday Times have led with the story that government ministers are figuring out plans to have Swiss-style ties with Brussels, an unwelcome move for Brexiteers.
Now, we've been running a poll, and we do have to say that actually Number 10 have said that that is not what is happening.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, we've run a poll on our Twitter site so far. Almost 19,000 people have had their say, and the outcome is 45% are pro-Brexit, with 55% against it.
Yeah, so...
Tell us what... I mean, you've got all the details.
So
you've been watching them all morning.
Yeah, so basically what happened here is it's been really fascinating. So earlier on, it was massively pro-Brexit, and then Remain Twitter woke up, which is great. It's had massive engagement, and it's 55% against Brexit. So this is a reversal. Twitter polls are really interesting things. They really engage everybody. And ostensibly, it's just a great thing to talk about. Anyway, let's...
So the headline is basically that GB viewers think...
they'd like to change their minds.
They'd like to change their minds.
So anyway, let's speak to anti-Brexit supporter and political editor of the Sunday Mirror and the Sunday People, Nigel Lawson.
No, it's not. It's Nigel Nelson.
Nigel Nelson, not Nigel Lawson.
Not Nigel Lawson. Goodness, he'd have
all
an
over the shop
entirely
after this
different
result,
opinion.
mate.
And joining him from their shared home, albeit in another room, is the former Conservative advisor Claire Purcell, who is pro-Brexit, which explains why they're in two different rooms. OK, you guys, first of all, I'm going to come to you, Claire. It looks as if, as far as our poll is concerned, you lost.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I think Martin's right. I think that Remain Twitter get up later than pro-Brexit Twitter. 19,000 people. It's an enormous poll for this time in the morning on a Sunday, and it is very, very interesting. I do wonder if you extrapolate that out across the country, whether you would get that result. The people that I've spoken to, who the same as me, who voted for Brexit and wanted that to go through, are still of that mind. I don't think that the majority would change their minds. There seems to be nothing else on offer from the Remain camp, only a lot more project fear, which is what they're good at.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to extend congratulations to the Remainers who won this poll. I honestly would. You know, well done. Nigel, what's your take? I'm not at all upset.
He's got his fingers crossed while he's saying it.
Well, I'm a bit surprised, actually, the way your poll is going. My view is that certainly I would be voting to remain if I had the chance again. However, I do respect the fact that the nation voted to leave the EU. I accept that result and that I lost that argument back in 2016. The problem since then really is just how to make Brexit work. And I would like to see Brexit work. So what the government seems to have done is played a kind of trick that cabinet ministers do every so often, and that is to float an idea to see how it plays. If there is a massive reaction against it, then they just pull out without leaving any fingerprints. If there's a positive reaction, they take it to the next stage and then claim the credit for it. Now, your poll would suggest that it's probably time to take this Swiss idea to the next stage.
Really? I mean, the interesting thing is, you see, Nigel, that, and he keeps chuckling here, but Martin really is absolutely, I'm amazed he hasn't put a black, he has got a black tie on, I was going to say. But I mean, the situation is that we've got a position now where we have to stay within the European Union, out of the European Union. And Number 10 Downing Street have said that actually this is not true, that they are not considering this. I mean, are they just flying kites, as you suggest, or are we having people that are just being, just wanting to cause trouble a bit from the back benches for Rishi Sunak and his Chancellor?
No, I think that this is actually flying a genuine kite, that I've been on the receiving end of things like this over the years. It's what governments do. They want to just see how the idea might play out there. And the real problem they've got at the moment is just how to solve the problem of Northern Ireland. No one's come up with a decent solution to that. Now, in the event that we were able to take the country effectively back into the single market, you would end the difficulties over Northern Ireland. No thought was put into what happens when we leave the EU, but share part of the country, a land border with it. So that's what I think lies behind this. No, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think the Tory party would wear it, but at least it's taken their mind off higher taxes.
Look, I've got to ask Claire, who's in a different room.
Yeah.
You are married to each other. You're sitting in separate rooms for our benefit today. But my goodness, when we come off air, you've got to go back together and have breakfast and live together for the rest of your lives. So how is this going to work out in the family?
Do you know, it is one of those issues which we have discussed endlessly. It is the gift that keeps on giving. And we can have a discussion. We disagree vehemently on Brexit, but it is very, very nice to hear Nigel say in public that he respects the decision made by the British public. We will continue to disagree with this. And the last thing that I want to see is a move back to any kind of closer ties and paying money into the EU budget. It was what I was fundamentally disagreeing with in the first place. But we can have these discussions, and it is very healthy to have them. We never fall out over it. And I think it's important that we don't go down a toxic route of discussing Brexit, but actually start to have these sensible, measured conversations. I think the country is kind of ready for that now, more than it's ever been. But you must respect the decisions made in 2016. And that's the one abiding rule that I have. We need to respect those 17 million people who voted to leave the European Union. You can't ignore that. And now we have to find out ways of making the Northern Ireland Protocol work without paving the way for further renewal of the European Court of Justice and paying into the EU budget. So I think that this is a good starting point. We won't disagree over toast and marmalade, but we will continue to debate.
Yeah, Claire and Nigel, good luck over your Brexit breakfast after this. I would say this, given the choice of winning a poll and winning an actual ballot, most Brexiteers will be happy that we won the actual ballot. But well done for winning the poll. I'm not at all upset. Let's move on.
Yes, we will indeed. Yeah. And there is just, how many times have we had to say this today? You all know, of course, there is just one day to go until England and Wales kick off their World Cup adventure. And a psychic alpaca called Alfie has predicted that England will qualify for the knockout stages despite losing to Iran in their opening game. But according to Alfie, Wales, oh, I'm sorry, Wales won't make it out of the group.
Well, Alfie is one of the smarter and responsive alpacas at the petting zoo where he lives in Fairy Tale Farm in Southcombe.
Love it.
So keepers decided to put him to the test.
Right, we can now speak to the director of Fairy Tale Farm, Nick Laister, and the psychic alpaca himself, Alfie. Nick, he is there. Is he somewhere? I can't see him.
Yes, Alfie,
Where we got
Alfie's
him?
right
There he
behind
is.
me. Can you
Oh, there
see
he
that?
is. Yeah. Now,
there
how
he
did
is.
you find out, Nick, that you had this psychic alpaca? I mean, what did he do one day? Come out with the England scarf wrapped around his neck, or chewing a piece of the Welsh flag? How did you find it out?
Well, it's just that Alfie has always seemed to just know a little bit too much, So if you, with the other alpacas, if you say to them, come on, we're going to take you to another field that they don't want to go in, they just follow, they just believe us. Whereas Alfie, he always gives us that look, which says, I know a little bit more. And then he goes to the opposite end of the field. He just seems to be able to second guess everything that we do. So we thought we'd put him to the test here at Fairy Tale Farm and get him to have a go at predicting the scores.
Well, you seem to be cheating because you've got the England flag round his neck already.
Oh yes, he's a very much England supporter. Yes, he's very much England. Although we did want to see Wales go through as well, but sadly that's not to be.
Can you just move to one side of it? Because we'd love to see a bit more of him live behind. It's not that we don't want to see you as well, darling.
Can we get Alfie over?
We would like. Can we get him over?
Come here, Alfie.
Come on, Alfie.
Come over here, mate.
Can we get him? Or can you go to him?
Can the camera go to him? There we
Yes.
go.
There he
That's it.
is.
Tight shot on Alfie.
Yes, lovely.
Beautiful.
Oh, yes. Good morning, Alfie.
There's a good football brain in there.
So what are you going to do to get him to predict today, for instance? What are you going to ask him to do today?
So what we've done today is we've set up an England and an Iran. I don't know whether you can see that.
Yes.
England and Iran. Now, last time, he when we did this for him, he went for Iran. This is the first game. So this is the one that takes place tomorrow. And I guess we're just going to prove now whether he really is psychic, because if he picks England this time, then that's obviously something going wrong. So we're going to put him to the test and see if he'll pick Iran for the second time.
Let's cue the drum roll. Over to Alfie.
Come on, Alfie.
Let's go for it, Alfie.
Come on, England.
Alfie.
Can we do it? Alfie. Alfie, no.
Oh!
Alfie, you've let the country down.
Are you sure you haven't got a bucket of kibble underneath that flag?
What's in the bucket, mate?
We can show you. We'll show you.
You got two.
There you go. Look.
You got one each. Oh well.
So there was speed in both of them, but it does. This is how we know.
Yeah. What about Wales? What about Wales, Nick? Have you got a flag there for Wales?
Yeah, do Wales, and do us a favour and put the English bait in the Welsh bucket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, go on.
Wales on this side. No, I put Wales on the opposite side, actually. Wales on the opposite side.
Okay. Alfie doesn't look at all interested.
Never worked with children and animals, Angela.
Yes. No.
So have you already done this before for Wales, and how did Alfie predict it then, or is this the first run with Wales?
No, for Wales, Alfie predicted that the USA would win.
Okay,
so, given that he's psychic, we are expecting him to come up with exactly the same result again, but fingers crossed. Here we go.
Alfie,
go for it,
over
Alfie.
to you.
Over. Right, where are you going?
He's going for USA again.
He's going for the USA.
Alfie is nothing if not consistent.
Yes.
Yeah.
You've now seen proof that Alfie is a psychic alpaca.
Are you going to do this every day, Nick, just to see what the results are likely to be?
We're going to be doing it all the way through the World Cup. And if he proves himself right, we'll be doing it through lots of other sporting events as well.
Yeah. Oh, well, he's going to become world famous, is Alfie, I think, isn't he?
Aidan, Stephanie, have you got a question for Alfie?
Yeah, have you got the tournament winners by any chance? Because I've drawn Brazil in the sweepstake, and I just want to know how good that bet is.
Unfortunately, we haven't gone that far yet. We've only done Group B. So all we can tell you is that England get through, as do the USA, get through Group B. That's all we can say at this moment in time.
Well, I'm happy to stick with Brazil for now.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Nick, thank you so much. And Alfie, thank you very much. He's gone.
Top lad.
He's lost interest. He's lost interest completely.
Fed up with the
there he is. There he is.
Horace.
Yes, Alfie. Oh, hang on. Is he going to have another go at it? Something? Oh, yes. No, he likes Wales. Thank you very much indeed, Nick, and thank you, Alfie.
Thank you very much. OK, let's cut back to the studio. So Steph,
show business.
You just witnessed something special.
I think there
What's your
was
take on
something. I think Alfie is going to be the next big thing for celebrities and psychics. And I actually do believe animals are quite intuitive, because I've been around dogs when I've been feeling low, and it's like they can pick up on it as well. So I do believe Alfie is onto something.
Are you sure it's not just what was in the bucket?
No.
And I wonder if Alfie should be getting an agent. I mean, the work offers could pile in.
I think he should be getting an agent soon. And you know what? Anytime there's something on, like a World Cup or any sporting events, then we can get Alfie again. So what his predictions are going to be.
We should get him in the studio, really, shouldn't we?
And now, Aidan, of course, you said earlier...
2005, actually, reminds me, I was working for the Daily Mirror, and I was in charge of the Football League pull-out on a Saturday. And one of my contacts made me aware of a performing dog called Jake, who was touring around grounds around the southwest, Plymouth, Exeter, Torquay, performing with a ball, juggling a ball at half-time. And I just noticed a trend. Every ground he went to, the home team tended to win. So I thought, I've got to bring him out to a wider audience. And we discovered the team with the worst home record in the country, which was Bradford City, managed by Colin Todd, former Derby County defender. And we managed to transport him with the aid of a sponsor. Guess who the sponsor was? Win-a-lot.
Nice.
We got him up there. No, they lost to a 9th-minute Rowan Vine goal for Luton Town.
So that was the end of his career.
That was it. Tony Slark. We managed to get him on the front of Dogs Today. That's what I said to the owner, Tony Slark. But I don't know what became of Jake after that, unfortunately. But he had a good run.
Yes, he
did. Do you
did.
think the football team are going to have a bit of a lucky charm, the England national team?
Well, no one. I'll tell you what. If you speak to most managers down the years, Sam Allardyce said to me some years ago, he said that these players are beset by fear. Now, that fear comes from pressure and being frightened to make a mistake. There's no furore around England at the moment. There's nobody's talking about the football. No one's mentioned the fact they haven't won a game since March. That's 8 months. So maybe the pressure's off. The group is tough, but England should still get through it. After that, who knows what happens?
You know, when we had that report from Jack, who was up there in the Midlands, wasn't he, with the supporters? What struck me, and as you all know in the studio, I am not a football fan, but what struck me was the guy he was talking to, his body language,
very downbeat,
and his tone of voice. He wasn't sort of up there, come on England, we're all going to be there.
They got the guy in Solihull.
He was very
downbeat.
He was very, very sort of calm and just not really involved at all.
No, look, maybe that's just endemic of how a lot of people are feeling about this World Cup. It has been overcome by politics. But I do, as I said last hour, I do think that when the ball's kicked, we will then get back into the football mode. And I'll tell you what, if England start doing well, a lot of this stuff will disappear in a puff of smoke.
I think it's the time of year as well. I think if it was summer, I think then we'll have much more of a World Cup feel. But
we'll be out getting barbecues, won't we?
It changes the mood of the World Cup, And
Will you be
time
watching
differences
it?
Oh yes, I love football. I love football.
I was certainly watching the England-Iran game, and I do think there could be a few surprises. I'd like USA, I like Wales. I think England have got it tough.
They have got it tough. As I said, it's the only group in the whole tournament where every team is in the top 20. That doesn't necessarily mean everything, because it depends who you've played. If you're in a league situation in the Premier League where you've all played the same opponents, so you can measure the table, it's pretty accurate. But if you're in the top, if you're number 16 in the world with FIFA rankings, you may have played teams who aren't very good. So it's not indicative of everything, but it's going to be no easy ride for England, that's for sure.
No, well, we're not going to hear the end of it. How long is it running?
Well, it's the shortest World Cup since 1978, so it's 29 days.
29 days. I can't wait for day 30. That's it from us this morning. Breakfast is going to be back from 6 a.m. tomorrow.
So well done to the Remainers who won the poll. And up next, it's Michael Portillo, who has Julian Lloyd-Webber and the former Chief Secretary of the Treasury, David Mellor. Thanks for joining us today.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK will be wet and cloudy in the east with rain clearing, sunshine and showers in the west. Here are the details. Across southwest England, after a dry start to the day, blustery showers will spread eastwards. These could be heavy at times, with a risk of a thunderstorm for western coasts. Cloud and rain will linger across southeast England at first, though once this clears, it will be a dry morning with some sunny spells. There'll be a mixture of sunshine and scattered blustery showers across South Wales this morning. These showers could be heavy and thundery. After early rain and cloud clears, it will be a dry and fine start across the Midlands, with sunny spells. Scattered showers that could be heavy at times will affect the west later. Cloud and rain will clear northeast England through the first part of the morning. This will leave a dry period with some sunny spells ahead of showers moving in from the west later. A band of rain will clear southern Scotland early this morning. This will be followed by a mixture of sunshine and scattered showers, and some of these could be heavy. There'll be a mixture of sunshine and scattered blustery showers across Northern Ireland this morning. Some of these showers could be heavy, with hail and thunder at times. So showers will continue to spread eastwards throughout this afternoon before easing into the evening with clear spells developing. That's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
Hello there, it's Eamon